Greetings, my friends. You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable, for that is why you are here. And now, for the first time, we are giving you the full story of what happened on that fateful viewing. We are giving you all of the evidence, based only on the secret testimonies of the miserable souls who survived this terrifying ordeal. The incidents, the places. My friends, we cannot keep this a secret any longer. Can your heart stand the shocking facts of the true story of Casino Royale 1967?
Join the Casino Royale fun movement.
Hello and welcome to You'll Only Listen Twice, our Bond podcast where we take a look at all the Bond films, both official and unofficial. Underscore that unofficial part because we are getting into the fucking doldrums. We're getting into the fucking shit. We're getting into, yes, of course, cue Casino Royale theme. I am James Bond 007.
I am James Bond 007.
I regret ever meeting you people and starting this podcast. This was the worst day of my life. My name is Jan.
No, your name is James Bond 007.
Yeah, did you get the memo?
Oh, right. Hilarious. We're all James Bond.
They can pay us less if we're all James Bond.
Jan, we can't have you fucking around like all over Europe because you're going by Jan. You are James Bond 007. We need to confuse the enemy. We need to confuse rival James Bond podcasters. So we're James Bond.
A good podcaster is a pure podcaster.
Yes, indeed.
Let me just say that right off the bat. I don't know if I should introduce myself at this point. I'm also 007 James Bond. Not Jimmy Bond. Definitely not. Definitely not.
No one
Jimmy
wants
Bond.
to be Jimmy Bond. No. And
My hero.
we know he's your hero, Jan. Yes.
We're off to a great start, folks.
We're off to a great start. Yeah, no, we're all here. And we're here to talk about a movie that is considered by many. Well, actually, no. Fuck this. I'm not going to say my hyperbolic thing of considered by many. This is truly the worst piece of shit ever made. But I watched it twice in the past week.
What?
My God.
Jake, have you seen this movie 4 times?
Well, we were supposed to record on Wednesday.
Somebody forgot that they were on a podcast.
No.
And his name is 007 James Bond.
Yeah, we're not going to name any names, but his name may be James Bond 007.
In defense of the Jewish James Bond, the anonymous Jewish James Bond that's part of our
No,
crew.
that's Jimmy Bond.
Yes, in defense of our Jimmy Bond, that's not a pederast, I would like to stress. But what happened was that this James Bond refused to watch this again. I was dreading it. And indeed, when my wife strapped me down to a chair and made me watch this because of some bullshit about I made a commitment to my friends and yada, 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 all this stupid shit. It took me 3 days to watch it.
You made a commitment. I'm glad you took the time, 3 days to watch it. I'll have you know, I watched it twice. I watched this movie twice because it is one of those movies that comes one ear out of the other. So I needed to make sure I was fresh with all the hot takes that are needed for this discussion, this very intense discussion on the movie that is Casino Royale 1967.
Join the Casino Royale fun movement.
I'm glad we took the time to prepare properly because I'm coming in piping hot, and we'll get into that.
Paul, if you say you like this movie, I will walk.
Paul, I will bomb your house.
Okay, let's calm down for a second.
I will bomb your house, and all that will be left is my toupee.
Dear listeners, we're doing a lot of hyperbole right now, but I do want to alleviate your concerns a little bit. I'm looking at my list, and Casino Royale is objectively only the 75th worst film of all time.
The numbers don't lie.
It is not as bad as Shrek the Third, Mac and Me,
You are fucking insane.
This is Troy
Shot
Peterson's
treatment.
official list.
Fern Gully.
This is worse than the Thunderbolt take. That makes me so angry. Shrek the Third is actually good.
No, it's not good, Jan, and it ruined a perfectly good franchise. Unlike this movie, which was some weird legal kerfuffle that I watched play in front of my eyes.
Shrek the Third has Eric Idle as Merlin.
Casino Royale has Orson Welles, never in the same room as Peter Sellers.
I gotta say, I've seen movies, maybe not as many older movies as you, Troy, but I gotta say, from all the movies that I've seen from the 1800s to 1967, Casino Royale, up to the point where it was made, I believe, is the worst movie of all time.
Yes.
Oh my God.
This is a genuinely hot take on my end. I'm looking at my list, and I probably need to reevaluate it, but I do have Casino Royale below Birth of a Nation, so I think that makes it pretty bad.
You know, I'm talking like normal movies that you just go and watch for fun. Nazi propaganda, Birth of a Nation, all that stuff. That's just a movie. This is as bad as you can get, at least up until like Epic Movie came out. And the fact that you mentioned Shrek in the same breath of this movie offends me.
It's the worst. So it was the worst movie until Epic Movie took its place.
It's better than Blade Trinity.
No. In my opinion, no.
Really? Blade Trinity. We're going to bat for Blade Trinity. My God. Should we try to explain to people at home why this movie, if we can call it a movie, exists?
No, we can't, Troy. It doesn't make any fucking sense. The backstory of this doesn't make any sense, just like the fucking movie. But go ahead, be my guest. Try, Jake, please.
Well, it starts off with a man named Gregory Radoff.
Mm-hmm.
He was the original one who optioned the rights to Casino Royale back in the 50s. And that went through a number of scripts. At one point, they got Lorenzo Semple Jr. of Batman 1966 and King Kong 1976 fame to write it. They tried to change James Bond into Jane Bond. There was another point where I forget the writer, but I'm trying to pull it up. At one point, James Bond was an American gangster and not a British Secret Service agent. And at a certain point, Radoff died. And his agent, Charlie K. Feldman, who was a famous agent, he was in charge of famous players, where Albert R. Broccoli was also an agent. He was working under him, but Charlie K. Feldman somehow obtained the rights to Casino Royale from Radoff's widow.
Wasn't there a point, I forget, was it with Radoff or with Feldman, where they were going to do a straight version of Casino Royale with Cary Grant as James Bond and Howard Hawks as the director, but then they saw Dr. No and Howard Hawks was like, nah.
I didn't see that in my notes, but
I read that in Wikipedia, so I believe that's true. It's just a shame that one of the best James Bond books went into the hands of the loathsome parasite that made What's New Pussycat.
What's new, pussycat? Whoa! No!
hey, but he also made The 7-Year Itch,
Oh.
amongst others. Let's go back to Charlie K. Feldman, because he got the rights from Radoff's widow, and he's like, all right, let's turn this into a movie. And no one was interested until From Russia with Love. I think from what I read, it was From Russia with Love where they're like, okay, maybe we can make this into a movie. And then Cubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman tried to get involved, and they're like trying to do a similar to friend of the show, friend of the podcast, Kevin McClory.
Who owns the podcast?
We had to sell the podcast to Kenneth McClory after the last episode.
Yes. So they tried to do a similar deal with Charlie K. Feldman, and I think they wanted to do a deal where it was $300,000 he would get up front plus a percentage of the gross. And Charlie K. Feldman didn't like this deal because he had already invested $350,000 into development of this movie. And so the deal fell through, and then it just kept going on. There was one point where he was saying that Roger Moore was going to be James Bond, which would never happen, of course. Not in the 60s, at least.
That old man?
Roger Moore would never be in a bad James Bond movie. That's ridiculous.
Of course not. Of fucking course not. And so there was one point where even Roger Moore commented on it. They were like, "Are you going to be in this rival James Bond movie?" And he's like, "Well, I've been asked, but I'd love to be James Bond. Hint, hint, wink, wink for the future. Lol." Anyway, so the deal falls through, and Albert R. Broccoli's like, another studio they're not going to touch it. They're not going to touch this because we are the controllers of James Bond. Apparently, immediately after the deal fell through, he went to a little place called Columbia Pictures to finance the movie. And once Columbia Pictures committed, United Artists and Cubby Broccoli were trying to go like, okay, maybe we can work out a deal where we can loan off Sean Connery so this could be a straight adaptation and also kind of be within the wings of a James Bond movie. That didn't happen. Then at one point, Charlie K. Feldman just thought, I'm just going to invite Sean Connery to be a part of this movie. And Sean Connery's answer to this request was, I'll do it for $1 million.
$1 million!
That fell through. And Charlie K. Feldman's like, fuck it. I'm going to do a spoof of James Bond. But not just a spoof. I'm going to do, in my big black Bond book, the quote him as saying, I'm going to make a producer's movie. What the fuck does that mean? Well, the result is
A nightmare.
Casino Royale 1967.
Join the Casino Royale fun movement.
Wait, are you implying that he planned to hire like 5 directors, like Wizard of Oz style?
The thing is that it's unclear as to whether that was the initial plan or whether it just happened.
Wikipedia just says the movie has 5 directors, but it doesn't say why.
Well, wasn't the original plan like to do a light spoof with just Peter Sellers as a James Bond, and like he was basically going to do Casino Royale but as like a spoof with its Peter Sellers? But then, skipping ahead a little bit, Peter Sellers only wanted to play a serious James Bond and hated being on the movie, so he walked off. And that's when Feldman had the breakdown and was like, 4 other directors.
I don't think so, because all the directors were involved at that point.
Oh my God.
No, yeah, all the directors were involved at that point. Also, I should mention that there were numerous scriptwriters, including Ben Hecht, Billy Wilder,
Yay.
to name a few.
Woody Allen.
Woody Allen,
Yeah.
Wolf Mankiewicz. And at some point, I think the initial plan was to do the multiple James Bonds to confuse the enemy, because they're like, what could be funnier than like having like a gabillion James Bonds in one movie? And then we could advertise it as Casino Royale is too much for one James Bond.
Casino Royale is too much for one James Bond.
Much like how OK Connery, which also came out in 1967, had the tagline, too much for one mother.
Will you shut the fuck up about OK Connery?
It's a real movie from the same year as this one.
OK Connery is a real movie. I will give you that. OK Connery is a real movie, but does it have James Bond? It does not.
It has M. It has Moneypenny. It has Anthony Dawson.
Troy, are you suggesting that a mother cannot handle 2 sons?
Yes, both named Connery? Absolutely not. This is what the Italians told me in 1967, and it's still true.
That's the plot of The Simpsons.
What? Who's the other son in The Simpsons?
Hugo. Tell us how this movie ends up having a $12 million budget.
Well, interesting story, Mark. So basically, it's a producer's film, so that meant, fuck it. We have 5 directors. We have Peter Sellers. We've got like every big star who's who in this movie. Woody Allen, Orson Welles,
Cameos.
John Hughes, William Holden, John Paul Belmondo.
Wait, did you say John Hughes?
Yes.
John Hughes is in the movie?
Yeah, from the Breakfast Club.
He was paid $50 million to act and do unaccredited screenwriting.
Oh my God.
To this movie.
You got Deborah Kerr, rhymes with star. Peter O'Toole,
He's got a line.
George Raft, William Holden. Guys, William Holden and Billy Wilder both worked on Sunset Boulevard and this movie.
It's a reteam.
Apparently, the only line that he wrote was the "Nobody's Perfect" line that happens when Evelyn Tremble as James Bond is meeting up with Q. And what was it like? He's trying on his bulletproof vest thing, and he says, "Well, nobody's perfect."
Well, nobody's perfect.
Yeah, he did that in Some Like It Hot. He copied one script, put it down.
But the weird thing is that they used that line twice, because in the previous scene when Evelyn Tremble is doing like the photo shoot with Vesper, he says it again. Well, nobody's perfect.
Well, nobody's perfect.
Yeah, they paid Billy Wilder a lot of money.
It's a line so good, they used it twice. I mean, I think, I want to know which of the 12 screenwriters decided that Q's head of security would be an elf from Santa's workshop. That's what I'd like to know.
It is kind of bold, not to get ahead of ourselves, but it is kind of bold that their take on Q for this movie was gay jokes.
Yes. Well, their take on Q, his assistant is a gay joke.
Yeah.
Q is in this movie?
Yeah, that was Q. Who plays Q? It's not an obscure guy. Give me a second.
You know who also was one of the writers of this movie was Wolf Mankiewicz, one of the screenwriters of Dr. No.
Mank himself, which relates to Orson Welles.
Orson found himself trapped with another Mank.
This is a British Mank. This is not the same Mank.
There's only one Mank, Jake.
And that's Ben Mankiewicz. I'm sorry, Ben.
There's only one Mank in the world.
At any given time, being a Mank is like being a Highlander. There can only be one at any given time.
Not to be confused with Tom Mankiewicz, who is actually related to titular Mank.
Did he work on this movie too?
He did not. He worked on Live and Let Die and The Man with the Golden Gun, but we'll get to those later.
Oh, one of those is worse than this movie in my book.
There we go.
Anyway, back to the production of Casino Royale. So it was dubbed Little Cleopatra because the budget went from $5 million and ballooned up to $11 million.
Oh my God.
Because of all the people just so happened to get involved.
Yeah.
They paid Peter Sellers a handsome amount of money, including, I think they got him a Rolls Royce plus a percentage of the gross. And he left halfway through filming.
And it's seamless the way they fix it.
It's seamless. It is.
God damn it. Paul liked this movie. I can just...
Dear God. Anyway, so...
I haven't said anything.
But yeah, it's worth mentioning that the budget for this movie is more than the budget for the actual James Bond movie that came out that year.
Yeah. What makes this movie so interesting is that, yeah, it's all of the A-list people in Hollywood at the time seeing James Bond as being successful and going, that's stupid. We can just do it. And it's a nightmare. And they all failed.
It is a complete and utter failure.
Hollywood can't compete with British excellence.
Well, this was supposed to come out in December 1966. And because you have, well, naturally, because you have 5 directors, you're shooting in almost every major studio in England, and your lead actor quits halfway through the movie. They figured out maybe it's not the best idea. The movie's not ready in December, but it will be ready sometime in 1967, which apparently United Artists were in talks with Columbia going like, okay, as long as your movie doesn't step on our movie, which was You Only Live Twice, everything's all good. And they were figuring that because it got delayed, it will be delayed to October 1967. They delay the movie only a couple months, so it comes out in spring of 1967, which pisses off United Artists because they've already spent so much money on promoting You Only Live Twice, which is supposed to come out that summer. And now we have this not James Bond movie featuring 5 James Bonds.
7 James Bonds.
7 James Bonds at Casino Royale.
No, 8 James Bonds.
Yeah, all right. I'm going to look at the script. All right, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Well, there's Jimmy.
Well, yeah, there's Jimmy. We always forget the Bond who's not attracted to women.
Cooper.
Cooper, yes.
He does karate.
He needs to get his head examined.
He's the only character remotely similar to James Bond in this James Bond parody.
And they don't use him at all. Like, he's just there.
He does karate.
Oh my god, how the fuck are we gonna talk about this?
All right, we're just going to have to go in order. Jake, hurry up with your stupid big black book.
Okay, so in the stupid big black book, James Bond: The Legacy by John Cork and Bruce Schiavelli.
All right, John Cork and Bruce Cadally, tell Jake to hurry up and read your book faster so I can talk about Scotland.
I really want to rip this movie a new one.
I feel like it's important to mention before we talk about it. So, chaotic production, everybody wants to be involved. Peter O'Toole shows up. He's paid it with champagne to do one line with Peter Sellers. Now it's premiering right before You Only Live Twice. One of the first screenings for the public was at the Sac Savoy Theater in Boston. And apparently they promoted on a radio show that if you show up in a trench coat, you will get free admittance.
Why?
And it's for perverts, Paul.
You could have 3 people on a trench coat, and then you have 3 free passes.
They wanted to pack the theater with 3 times the number of children.
Anyway, so the Sac Savoy Theater, they had a gimmick where if you show up in a trench coat, you can get free admittance to the screening. And apparently they're like, oh, that's okay. We're going to have the screening at 4 a.m, so no one will show up.
Why?
Everyone showed up. Everyone from Maine drove all the way down to Boston to show up at the screening. Like, they completely filled up the screening. There were a bunch of angry people in trench coats going like, we want a second showing. And they started to riot at the theater to the point where there was destruction of public property.
Riot at Casino Royale.
Yeah, there was a riot at Casino Royale.
This really was a disaster for Britain, this movie.
No, this was in Boston. This is in the United
this
States.
is a bunch of Mark Wahlbergs in trench coats, like, yelling.
So you can define America before and after Casino Royale came out. It was a really traumatic event.
Jan, this was a decade of protests. You have the civil rights movement, you have the Vietnam War protests, and you have the first screening of Casino Royale in Boston. And they fucked up the joint, to put it lightly. They tried to coerce the theater to play it again, which they were compelled to do, apparently.
Yeah, wait. So this riot was they wanted to see the movie again?
No, all the people who showed up who couldn't get admittance into Casino Royale, they wanted these trench coat motherfuckers that came from all over the country. They wanted to be the first to see this piece of shit movie. And when they couldn't do that, they rioted. Apparently they showed it again. The police showed up to detain unruly guests. It ended up being a giant protest around the block with windows being smashed in, police cars being turned. It was so bad. It was so bad that I think the district attorney of Boston, they decided to let go everybody because they're just like, we can't jail idiots. And they only charged one person with defacing a police car.
And it was Charles K. Feldman.
Yeah.
Imagine you're J. Edgar Hoover and you think that Martin Luther King's the biggest threat to national security. And you look at your window and there's a bunch of people in trench coats rioting over not being able to see Casino Royale.
Join the Casino Royale fun movement.
So we kind of explained why is Casino Royale 1967, but we should get into what is Casino Royale 1967.
Why, what, when, where? I must mention that all of my notes for this episode end in a question mark.
Ah, the Socratic method.
Sure, let's call it that.
Our listeners may remember our very first episode where we talked about the 1954 Casino Royale.
I remember it well.
You probably remember how the book is supposed to go, and there's 15 minutes of the movie that resemble that vaguely.
Is it 15?
I counted. Yes, the Peter Sellers, Orson Welles part is shockingly like 20 to 30 minutes of the movie. I maintain that was supposed to be the movie.
That's an interesting theory.
I know the David Niven scenes were only shot after Peter Sellers was fired. I know the plan was not to have David Niven be the main James Bond, which is ironic because of the Pink Panther, where Peter Sellers stole the movie from David Niven.
Oh.
Yeah.
So David Niven came back for his revenge.
Yes, as Sir James Bond.
Which is not to be confused with the official James Bond of the Eon series,
Who is mentioned.
and he is making a mockery of the James Bond name because he fucks women and uses gadgets.
Hardly a description of that sexual acrobat who leaves a trail of beautiful dead women like blown roses behind him.
You mean,
You know very well who I mean. That bounder to whom you gave my name and number. Him and his wretched gadgets.
And he's not in the movie because he is now doing television?
Incidentally, where is my namesake?
We've had to take him off the board, sir. He's now doing television.
This movie is about the original James Bond, Sir James Bond.
the true, one and only, original James Bond.
Who was a spy around World War One?
Yes, that was the height of his powers, and he was the greatest spy from about 1899 to World War I. He is like 50 years old in 1967 for some reason, but he had to retire because he had sex with one woman, Mata Hari. It was him and Woodrow Wilson, as we all know from the modern classic The Kingsman. Those are the two people who had affairs with Mata Hari. And Sir James Bond turned Mata Hari in, and then he retired to his country estate where he has lions, multiple houses and gardens, and he plays, who's the composer he plays every afternoon?
Debussy.
Debussy. Yeah, he plays Debussy.
He always finishes on Debussy. But before we talk about Debussy, I just want to mention how this movie has the worst pre-title sequence I've maybe ever seen.
They just grabbed the scene.
It feels like a mistake.
We should preface what is the pre-title sequence of this movie. So it begins with Mathis approaching Evelyn Tremble, who is now James Bond 007. He appears from behind the wall, and you don't know
does he appear in the rest of the movie?
Yes, he does. And he switches from a Scottish accent. He switches from a Scottish accent over to a French accent to a British accent. And then Bond goes like, why do you keep sounding different? Why are you a Frenchman, but you sound like a Scotsman?
Oh, later in the movie, right? And then he's like, good question.
You're a French police officer, and yet you have a Scots accent. Ah. It worries me too.
And then there's French schoolgirls that I think is supposed to be a parody of the Madeline comic strip.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Well, it's just dressing to set up like where this is supposed to be. And in case you weren't already sure of where this is supposed to be, we get a little graffiti. Okay, where Bond is actually a public toilet. These were public toilets that appeared throughout France, apparently.
Yeah.
And there's graffiti.
The French are so disgusting, I gotta say.
The French.
The views of Jan on the French do not reflect the views of all the people on You'll Only Listen Twice.
So, in case you weren't sure of where this takes place, there's little graffiti on the pole in this public toilet that says, Les Beatles! So you're like, oh, this is France. And so this British man who is playing a French police officer pops out and goes like, Mr. Bond? We pull back and we are revealed who our James Bond is. And it is none other than Peter Sellers, who is sitting on the toilet, presumably, because this is supposed to be a French public toilet. And he goes like, I am Lieutenant Mathis of the Special Police. And he shows him his credentials.
By opening his trench coat.
He's pulling out his badge, but he's doing it over his crotch. So it sounds like he's propositioning him for sex. I think that is the joke. So he's just like, these are my credentials. And he looks, they appear to be in order. Come. And then it just ends right there.
I did not get that at all. All I got was like, this is just a scene, like a random scene that they had no idea how to start the movie.
What's funny about that is you can see, so that scene, he meets Mathis an hour and 15 minutes into the movie, and you can see that that scene was supposed to go an hour and 15 minutes into the movie because he just meets Mathis in a car. There's no, like, introduction. So then you realize, oh no, Charles K. Feldman thought this whole proposition joke was so funny that he had to take it and put it before the credits.
Well, according to Val Guest on the featurette on the DVD, Psychedelic Cinema, apparently Charles K. Feldman would go like, there's not enough jokes here, or there's too many jokes in this reel. Can we move one of the jokes to the beginning? And it's just like, what the fuck does that mean? And now that you're mentioning it, how this is supposed to be the middle of the movie, I'm like, oh my God. That's what happened.
Yes,
that's what he's
happened.
talking about.
This movie is so strange because it's like 60-year-old men who are like, what are the kids like? Being horny and World War I.
Yeah, it's unclear if this is supposed to be a time capsule of the 60s where everyone was high and horny, or a parody of the 60s where everyone was high and horny.
It's both.
Beyond a certain point, doesn't really matter.
It might be one of the most 60s movies ever made, which leads me to my next point, which is right after that god-awful pre-title sequence, we get the title sequence, and we also get one of the only redeeming qualities of this movie, which is Burt Bacharach music.
Yeah, the music in this movie is
awesome.
Surprisingly amazing.
The Casino Royale main theme is still a bop, and I listened to that independent of the movie. Oh, yeah, because this is where The Look of Love came from.
The Look of Love, yeah.
Which is like one of the like biggest songs of the 60s. Like that is like when people think of like, okay, we need to do a romantic moment and it takes place in the 60s, you automatically put in The Look of Love.
Yeah.
Yeah, Austin Powers used it.
Oh, Catch Me If You Can play. Remember in Catch Me If You Can, they play The Look of Love.
Yeah.
Steven fucking Spielberg used it.
No, I don't know. Did you guys, I don't know how many Saturday Night Live fans we have listening to the podcast, but there's this very famous sketch, to me at least, where Will Forte is a coach. I know he did it with Peyton Manning, but it was a running sketch where the team is down and he gives a whole speech and he's like, I'm going to play you some pump up music to get you going. And he plays it. And it's the opening theme to Casino Royale. And he's like, da 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 da.
Which has lyrics when we find out at the end. It has lyrics. And the lyrics are,
James Bond!
He's got him on the run with guns
and
knives. We're fighting for our lives.
If an official James Bond movie would have the balls to use that song in their end credits,
oh my God,
it would be incredible.
Even if it's just like a ringtone that like somebody has, like it just starts playing randomly.
That would be amazing.
That would be great.
If you guys are listening to this on YouTube or wherever, I hope we have listeners.
Pornhub.
But wherever you're listening to this, look up what if the 2006 Casino Royale used the 1967 theme song, and it works perfectly. Like
it does.
It really does. No, the music's fantastic. So you have a brief glimpse into, oh, maybe this movie's gonna be fun.
Do you know who designed the opening credits of Casino Royale?
Your mom?
Kevin McClory.
Wait,
No.
I would have believed you.
No. It was Richard Williams.
Oh yeah, Richard Williams
I did
from
know
the
that.
Thief
Yeah.
and the animator behind The Thief and the Cobbler.
Roger Rabbit.
And Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
One of our boys. I don't know. It felt very Monty Python to me.
Yeah.
You know.
And Monty Python wasn't even a thing until 68,
so
right?
I think we're beginning a motif here of things that were invented in Casino Royale, the film.
Yeah, I think Casino Royale has a bigger influence. For instance, he was trying to make The Producers movie, and The Producers came out later in 1967. So...
And in The Producers, features a song called Springtime for Hitler and is about Hitler. And Peter Sellers dresses up as Hitler in this movie.
Yeah, we should probably get to that. That scene escalates very quickly.
Melissa walked into the room right at that scene, and she was like, what the fuck are you watching? But yeah, there are people who will say that this movie is good because it's Python-esque, or it's like...
I know of no one who says that this is Python-esque.
Yeah, I've actually never heard this.
Go on Letterboxd. you will see people going like, this is like Buñuel combined with Monty Python.
Okay,
All I
they're
have to say
wrong.
is, you fucking morons.
Paul, before we get into, Jan was going to go into the John Huston segments.
Yes.
You've been building this up like the
Oh,
entire time of
have
what
I?
your thoughts are of the movie.
Well,
Actually, should we save this or should we keep going?
It will
and
come
back
out
to
as
it?
we go along.
I think it'll come out naturally.
it'll come out naturally. However,
Oh no. No!
Paul,
we're off to a
God
good start.
my method of driving you to insanity with these Bond movies, it's failing. I could already tell.
We're all in it together, boys. Who's locked in here with who? Who's locked in here with who?
I think Paul was submitted to the Orson Welles mind torture machine, for which I'm gonna have to break through the Zoom and shoot him in the head.
You're gonna have a bagpipe that has a machine gun in it, and you're gonna mow me down.
I am going to slip you an explosive drug that goes off in 300 burps. Anyway, Jan, we're talking about John Huston.
John Huston, one of the greatest to ever do it. You're thinking, well, his section at least is gonna be good. It's immediately one of the worst things I've ever seen in my entire life. It is immediately fucking painful. Like you said, Jake, you have no idea if this is supposed to be a comedy or not at first. There are like no jokes.
That's the thing that's like, it's baffling because it starts off and you're just kind of like, this is somewhat in tone with the ridiculousness of the Bond movies, but like etched up a little bit because you have William Holden, John Huston, a Russian guy and a French guy in a car.
Charles Boyer. Academy Award winner Charles Boyer.
They introduce, so like, they're driving and there's, what was it, tigers?
Well, the gag is there's lions everywhere. I hope they don't do anything wacky, and one of them climbs up on the car and is sitting up there, and then there's like this bombastic fanfare as it keeps driving down the lane towards Bond's estate, which is hilarious. And you don't know what like Jan said, you don't know what the tone is supposed to be, because you're just like, is this funny? Is this amusing?
Like, William Holden is smiling, so he's happy, but John Huston's doing a ridiculous Scottish accent as M.
My dear James, when you left us, we were a small service, underfinanced, ludicrously ill-equipped.
Is he even doing a Scottish accent? He's like, it's like his voice, it's like him doing his voice, but he's rolling his R's a little bit more.
Like a Scottish accent.
He sounds like it sounds like a Sacha Baron Cohen character, but one of
He
the
was
like
not
rejects.
supposed to play the role. He wanted Roger Morley, I believe, to play M.
Yeah.
But he didn't do it. Or Robert Morley.
He wanted someone else.
And so John Huston steps in this horrible red wig and mustache.
That's your biggest red flag, you might say, off the bat, is that John Huston has his normal head that is not full of hair with a bright red little guy on top. And you're automatically thinking,
John Huston's immediately off-putting, and then we're introduced to James Bond, and he's in a chair that's going up and down. I don't know if that's supposed to be a gag or not. I genuinely don't.
Well, I think it's a gag, but the device he's using was apparently a late 19th century workout device.
And he's wearing a, how do you say it in English? Cucumber? A turban?
yes, a turban.
Oh, and then he also has like a very shaky butler.
He has a shaky butler. And it eventually becomes clear that he's kind of doing a stutter sometimes.
Yes. So he starts out with a stutter.
Your joke shop spies, gentlemen.
Nothing to speak of, I'm afraid. What is your name, my dear?
And then James Bond's stutter disappears at some point in the movie.
When John Huston stops directing the movie is when the stutter disappears. And James Bond even says, I'm not stuttering anymore. I'm done.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Moneypenny, since I came in here, have you noticed me stammer?
No, sir.
Splendid. Let me know if I do. I haven't got time for that now.
And it's like, okay.
Did John Huston also direct the Scotland scenes?
Yes, all of this, everything up to when James Bond leaves Scotland is all John Huston.
Because the Scotland stuff is also just fucking painful.
Much like Skyfall, we are taking the James Bonds home in Scotland. They try to get him out of retirement because the new James Bond sucks, but he's like, no, Matahari, I'm celibate. So M orders a bombardment on his house that blows everything up.
Sorry.
Except for David Niven, James Bond, and William Holden, and M dies. M orders his own suicide, to his own killing.
Which is kind of funny.
Which may or may not foreshadow something that might happen in a future James Bond film that we haven't seen.
Wait, what are you
yet.
talking about? Wait, why would this happen in a James Bond movie?
Why would a character in like a real, legitimate Eon production ever allow them to be nuked?
And why would M allow themselves to die at James Bond's home in Scotland? That's ridiculous.
Hey.
You're testing me, Troy. You're testing me.
This beautiful country estate explodes everywhere, and all that is left is our little red foxy friend, the toupee.
But also, you don't realize that M has died until the next scene where they tell you that M has died. It's so horribly told.
But that's what kind of makes it fun. If you really kind of think about it,
I haven't.
That's like one of the funniest parts where it's just like, oh, he orders Bond's home to be mortared, and he dies. And the results of it, he is obliterated. Like, M is obliterated. There is nothing left except for his toupee.
He's standing right next to James Bond. It makes no fucking sense.
This tortured me when I saw this as a kid, and that's what makes it kind of funny.
No, you're lying to yourself, Jake.
Yeah, you're just going, that doesn't make sense, so it's funny, but it just doesn't make sense.
I will admit, in a very unfunny movie, I laugh very few, but one of the few enjoyments I get out of watching this is trying to piece together, how did M die in that explosion?
William Holden, who is also standing right next to M, is also alive at the end of the movie. So somehow a man standing in between two other men nowhere near the bombardment is dead.
John Huston is a very frail man at this point. Let's keep that in mind. But yes, I mean, I think also the other thing that is not clear but conceptually kind of funny is that this whole introduction sequence, they're coming in, James Bond, we need you to come out of retirement, we have a very special mission for you. And he's like, no, fuck the Queen. And then they're like, all right, we can launch the missiles, you know.
And then
that does make me laugh.
Yeah.
I'll admit that's pretty funny.
So now we're in Scotland, and we are at the home of M, whose real name is
McTarry.
Yes.
And Smersh has infiltrated the castle, somehow puts in their own agent. Deborah Kerr is posing as McTarry's wife. And also there are a number of beautiful Smersh agents who are posing as his daughters.
Yeah, because the whole point is that the David Niven, the OG James Bond, is a celibate man who does not have sex except for Matahari that one time. So in order to destroy James Bond's reputation, they are going to make him have sex with all these women, which seems like a ridiculous plot for James Bond until you realize that's the plot of From Russia with Love.
And then you also have to consider that the real James Bond does exist in this universe.
Yes, who is already ruining his reputation.
Right. So now they're ruining it even further by making sure that the real original Sir James Bond is caught in compromising positions with M's not daughters / wife.
Yes.
Some of them are adopted, we are told. We don't know which ones.
But they're all part of Smurfs. And so is Deborah Kerr, because she's Agent Fifi or Mimi.
Right. So we don't that's the thing. We don't actually know where his real family is, do we?
No, they're on vacation.
But here's the thing. Like, I think when he gets into the tub with one of the daughters and he's going like, oh,
Buttercup.
you're naked. Oh. I think the movie starts revealing its sense of humor, and it's when you really start to get worried for the next 2 hours because that's a scene that just happens, and they just let it happen for like 2 minutes of him going like, oh, what is
He's
this
uncomfortable, and there's no punchline.
There's no structure. There's no setup. There's nothing. It's just.
I will say that I think the punchline is supposed to be that he turns on the cold water so to make sure he doesn't get a boner, and that like it kills the mood.
Because it's his very proper way of getting into a bath with a young girl and then getting rid of her.
This is a constant theme throughout the movie where a joke is started or hinted at, it goes nowhere, and then it stops.
Yeah.
The whole plot of having a bunch of James Bond is a joke that goes nowhere. It's like anti-comedy.
This movie is the equivalent of a guy at a party pointing at someone else at the party and going, "What's he doing over there?" And then that's it.
Yeah.
That's what he's bringing to the table here.
We should note, before the bathtub scene, one note I wrote down, which may also reveal this movie's sense of humor. They debate whether M's toupee, which has its own little coffin, is an article of clothing or a body part, and whether it deserves a proper Christian burial. And they refer to it as neither. They refer to it as a heirloom.
Just how personal is a toupee?
It can only be regarded as a heirloom.
And that's what kind of
because this
that is true.
I'm starting to get worried whenever you describe a plot point from this movie, you just have the biggest smile.
No. Well, the whole thing with this castle is everything is stuffed. So they have to decide if they have to bury the toupee or if they're going to like stuff it, right?
Yes. Well, this is the other thing. Like, very quickly you get the effect of, I don't know, it's a little bit complex. But Sean Connery, famous Scotsman, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Technically, these are agents. These are not actual Scottish nobility. But I feel like this is a pretty brutal portrayal of the Scotsman people.
I don't think Connery would have signed off on this.
Sacrificing lambs.
Have you seen the Dark Plays episode? It's the episode where they allegedly got canceled for being racist towards Scotland.
That's basically this sequence.
Yes.
Yeah, the plot of the horror of that episode was that Garth Marenghi had to accidentally do a layover in Edinburgh, and it was like the worst day of his life. And it's like, these heathens are trying to steal our way of life and kill the queen. That's how the Scots are represented in this.
Yeah.
God. And of course, who could forget Matthew Vaughn's The Kingsman, another spy movie with heavy World War I overtones, where the Scots famously caused World War I.
I want to talk about one of the most painful scenes, in my opinion. I've used the word painful a lot while talking about this movie, but this is
painful
a scene
Casino
where,
Royale. No,
this is a scene where I go from being worried to me going, "Oh no!" And it's the scene where they're playing with boulders.
Okay, well, this needs a little context because once the agent who's pretending to be M's daughter in the bathtub fails, Deborah Kerr just goes for it.
After they try to drug him at the haggis dinner.
Yeah.
Yes, they try to drug him.
And then they end up all passing out because Bond doesn't drink.
He never drinks wine.
I'm coming.
Mr. Lugosi, are you interested in...
Pardon me. I'm coming.
Yes, because this Bond is pure, as M has established before he tries to kill Bond and then accidentally kills himself. Deborah Kerr jumps on Bond. He's like, no. And then she's like, that's it. You will fight my guards, not her sons. And they have 5 boulders, and each one picks it up and stumbles around in a humorous fashion, which really reminded me of Deputy Andy in Twin Peaks when he gets like smacked in the forehead, and it's like it's like performance art, right? It's like
it's
minutes of stumbling.
It's like a Sideshow Bob stepping on the rakes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's also when you realize, like, sometimes it's very clear when you watch a scene that they didn't choreograph this or plan this at all until they got to set. And this, to me, is like that quintessential kind of scene where it's just like, you have a boulder. It'd be funny if you fell back, and the other guy would be funny if you try to throw it, but you throw yourself with it. It's so fucking bad.
This guy falls back through a door. This guy falls back on the ground.
The whole joke is they're all like big and strong, but not as strong as David Niven. And Deborah Kerr is like losing it, like she is in heat.
She's mouthing off in French.
He literally stands there as these men pick up boulders and then fall down. The final guy he beats, he swings at him, and then he karate chops the boulder in half, which is the first action thing he does in the movie. And she immediately drops the Scottish accent and says "magnifique," and is extremely horny.
All the other women in the room are like, what the hell? She's being unprofessional.
Just like, oh my God, he's too much man for her. We need to lock her in her bedroom because she might fuck up the mission because she's so horny for elderly David Niven.
Which again is a plot point in most James Bond stories of the time.
Again, we're playing by the book so far, guys.
Yeah.
No, that's why you're not sure if this is supposed to be funny or not. Like, during that boulder scene, I went to a family funeral just last week, and I genuinely laughed more at that than at that fucking scene. And then we have the scene with the ducks.
Oh yeah, are we going into the drones? Like the weird drones?
Yeah, this movie invented drones. Another thing that was invented by Casino Royale.
Not by Kevin McClory, motherfucker.
No.
This is a Charles K. Feldman unrestricted air warfare joint.
That's right. He's shooting birds. I don't know if he knows that they're fake, but they have bombs in them, and he doesn't really react when he's shooting them and they're exploding into massive fireballs.
Because to be real, would David Niven even know that it's like, oh, these are like drone grouse that are exploding?
Okay, I really want to get out of Scotland. So Deborah Kerr becomes a nun and she fucks off, and then we go to England.
No. You're missing one of the biggest jokes of the scene is that, so she escapes from her room, goes and helps James Bond, also tells him that she's an agent and they're trying to kill him. And then it looks like she's mortally wounded. But then it's a joke, and that she's actually going to go off and put herself in a convent.
And John Huston's part of the movie is over.
Yeah, so does this include the car scene that also kind of goes nowhere?
We don't know at this point. At this point, it gets a little blurry who directed
There's
what.
a milk truck that is full of bombs. It has eyelashes, which is also a thing that exists in the world now, I want to note. It invented by Casino Royale.
Wait, Paul, do you think people didn't have eyelashes before Casino Royale?
People did not put decorative eyelashes on their cars before Casino Royale.
Oh, okay.
Are you saying that this movie inspired the movie Cars too?
Well, look, there are cars in both. I'm just saying.
Is anyone else genuinely surprised that Michael Caine is not in this movie? That seems like a weird omission.
I was missing him. There was something cool. There was something a little bit off about this movie, and now that you say it, I think that's what it was.
Yeah, no Michael Caine. It's bullshit.
I can't believe you didn't just like stumble in like blackout drunk with Peter O'Toole.
Yeah.
Like, you're making a Bond movie, eh? What's all of this?
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, that was really good, Michael Caine.
I said, when you try to imitate Michael Caine, you say, blimey, that's Michael Caine, but it's not easy imitating Michael Caine.
The perfect impression does not exist. I was like, Charlie K. Feldman, are you going to put me in your movie, eh? I want Peter Sellers to tug on my junk, eh?
I want you to put that first scene of the film, eh?
I'd like to bug Ursula Andress, eh? Hey.
Now, 30 minutes into the movie, I guess the plot proper starts, which is James Bond becomes M, and he gets this brilliant idea. Well, first, he sexually assaults Miss Moneypenny's daughter.
Yes, because he thinks it's Moneypenny.
Who has also joined a convent off screen.
Yes.
Yes.
That's a recurring joke. Women who can't have James Bond become nuns.
Yes.
Then he starts talking to this guy that talks like this, which is one of the only things that makes me laugh in the movie. I don't know why.
Stabbed to death in a Turkish bath.
Stabbed to death in a lady's sauna bath, sir.
And then we get introduced to the other only redeeming quality of this movie, Woody Allen. Yes.
No, there is one more redeeming quality, but I'll call him out when he announces his presence. But yes, Woody Allen.
The single funniest scene in the entire movie. Like the one bit in
By
this
far.
nearly 2.5 hour long monstrosity.
You can tell he wrote that scene, like his own dialogue.
You could tell Woody Allen was writing bananas, and he's like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to take this scene and give it to this movie out of the kindness of my terrible black
But
heart.
he's doing classic Woody, you know? Those are classic Woody lines. They tell me dying's very bad for me.
My doctor says I can't have bullets enter my body at any time. What if I said I was pregnant?
My single favorite line in the movie is, you know this is just going to be a letter to the Times.
You realize this means an angry letter to the Times.
And I'm like, yes.
And then he has the exploding cigarette, and he's just like, so long, suckers!
So long, suckers!
And then he hops the fence, and there's another firing squad.
Yeah, Woody Allen's being led in front of a firing squad, and he just keeps bouncing from firing squad to firing squad.
It's incredible.
In classic Jimmy Bond fashion, we introduce him evading capture by the authorities.
I mean, it's weird. A lot of what Woody Allen does in this movie and what happens to him parallels his real life.
I, too, thought it was weird in the movie where Woody Allen directed Hannah and Her Sisters, and Michael Caine was not in that scene. I'm like, Michael Caine should be in this scene where Woody Allen directs Hannah and Her Sisters.
This movie invented a lot of things, Troy, but unfortunately not Michael Caine because he was unavailable.
It's one of Woody Allen's first movies, so you could say this movie is the origin of evil.
So the whole reason why you even meet Woody Allen is because Sir James Bond, the James Bond we know is doing television, and his nephew is Woody Allen, who is Jimmy Bond, who he believes has been executed in a South American firing squad. So he gets the brilliant idea to franchise James Bond. And that's where we get the immortal idea of making everyone in the movie James Bond to throw off SMERSH.
And they're recruiting agents to become James Bond to confuse SMERSH, but they all need to be celibate, just like the real Sir James Bond. So
why? Because all of their agents that are not named James Bond have been killed or captured, and it was all because every agent for MI6 is a sex maniac. Except for James Bond.
It's depressing that the word secret agent has become synonymous with sex maniac.
This man assaulted the daughter of his coworker, like in the previous scene before he said this.
Oh, and the stammer's gone at this point.
Yeah, the stammer's gone. He announces it's over.
Stammer's gone. He does not realize that a woman who is 20 years old is probably not his lover from 80 years ago.
From World War I.
Which is a joke that they later do in A View to a Kill.
Yeah.
Again, invented by Casino Royale.
Oh, man.
No.
I like
So
Casino
this movie
Royale
invented Monty Python, Cars, Woody Allen, A View to a Kill.
Saturday Night Live.
Saturday Night Live.
Speaking of Saturday Night Live, Vesper Lind shows up.
Oh, yes.
In a funny outfit.
Played by Ursula Andress.
A purposefully funny outfit because she doesn't want people to stare at her on the streets.
Yeah.
Like she wore that outfit in public.
What a charming outfit that is. Do you often wear that in the office?
If I wore it in the street, people might stare.
She has to be some kind of mastermind of spies because if she couldn't just walk around like that.
Yeah, she is like a leader of a criminal organization, something. We don't know. James Bond promises to lower her taxes or something if she bankrolls the scheme to bankrupt SMERSH. This is where Casino Royale starts to come in, because I guess at this point, Le Chiffre and Smirch are a thing, and they want to bankrupt them. So Sir James Bond's idea is to recruit a man named Evelyn Tremble, played by the immortal and also psychotic Peter Sellers.
Yeah.
It was a great idea to put him in the same room with Orson Welles, wasn't it?
Two of the biggest egomaniacs of the 1960s? What could possibly go wrong?
I just hope the British royal family doesn't get involved in some weirdly specific way.
Well, and just like with Woody Allen, you see this guy show up and you're like, oh, this is where the laughs are gonna start. He's fucking terrible.
Well, because Peter Sellers thought this movie was going to be his break into serious acting.
No, he's playing it straight for most of the time.
To the point where, like, the only parts where he's being funny, you can clearly tell they're outtakes where he's just goofing around.
Like they're holding a gun at him.
A funny accent.
Yeah, they're holding a gun at him and going, dude, do the Indian accent. And he's like, yeah. I don't want to. And like they're loading the gun.
The beggar who is sitting in the marketplace is completely deaf in so much as far as listening to the song that is coming from the mockingbird is concerned.
Do your most offensive gay voice.
Do it
when
now.
He gets in the car and starts doing that silly voice, looking straight at the camera. He's like, me and my Formula One, whatever, and you're like, this is an outtake. this is just him goofing
my Formula
around.
3, hee.
I am faster in my Lotus Formula 3, hee.
But yeah, so Evelyn Tremble, he's James Bond, and they kind of introduce him, but then they intercut that with the Cooper scene where he's not attracted to women or something. That's all they do with him.
It's training because all the most attractive women throughout the entire world are trying to seduce him, and he has to judo flip them and go like, nah, I'm not interested. And the only person that almost gets to him is Dalliah Lavi as what is she? The adjudicator?
She's the detainer. Her character doesn't have a name besides the detainer, aka James Bond 007.
Yes. And then at the end of that, he's like, I have to get my head examined because I'm turning down all these women. Tee-hee, that's the scene.
Yes, the other part that makes me kind of laugh about this movie, I think sort of unintentionally, is that when Vesper asks Peter Sellers if he will play against Le Chiffre, he goes like, why? This is most offensive. This is mere seconds after he dressed up as Hitler. And I don't know.
Yeah, because he's doing the fashion show. Laugh. They're playing The Look of Love. He's dressing up in little outfits, and then suddenly he comes out as Hitler, and he leaves with Hitler. Then he's Napoleon. Then he's Toulouse-Lautrec.
It's like, here I am, comedian Peter Sellers. I got this closet full of funny hats. One funny hat, two funny hat, full Hitler costume, full Napoleon costume.
Also Toulouse-Lautrec. Because why not?
This movie really is that guy at the college party doing lol so random, look at me things with no structure, no setup, no punchline.
My favorite part of that is, yes, because they do Hitler first. He goes first. And Peter Sellers looks so ashamed when he's standing there. Like, with everyone else, he's like moving around, but like when he's Hitler, he's just like holding his hands, just standing a little hunch, and he's like, I'm Hitler.
Right he does now.
A little to be fair, that's how Hitler acted.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
It's a very studied impression. But what I was going to say, the other thing she asks him when they meet is she asks him, isn't Evelyn a girl's name? And he says, well, it's my name or something like that.
Yeah.
Isn't Evelyn a girl's name?
No, it's mine, actually.
I'm trying to understand. The only thing I could think of is like, is this like because he played a man named Claire Quilty in Lolita? Like, what's the joke
my God.
there?
I don't know.
That could
It might be.
No, because the thing is, this is inside joke for 60-year-old producers in the 1960s who were drunk every day. Like, it could be anything.
I'm imagining Charles K. Feldman in like the trenches of the Somme in like 1917, and a guy gets shot next to him, and he's like, my name's Evelyn Tremble, and he's like, heh, that's a girl's name. And then 50 years later, he just puts it in this movie.
But Jake is right. This was just a crazy drug fuckfest for the producers. The floor runners probably had to come in with mops to clean all the 80-year-old cum of the floor and
spilt champagne, semen, and
I would like to take this chance to say a positive thing about this movie. I think Ursula Andress does a fine job as Vesper Lind and is giving a better performance here than as Honey Rider and Dr. No.
That is actually true. Is this a real voice?
I think that's her real voice. Because what was it? Nikki Vandersil voiced her in Dr. No, so we get to actually hear her voice.
Yes.
And she's given a lot more to do. She's the leader of a spy ring, almost the complete opposite of the Vesper in the novel, who is just sent there to aid Bond. And then you later, spoilers, you find out that she's actually a Smersh agent.
Yeah.
In this one, it's different, where she is recruited. Well, she's recruited by Sir James Bond, but she's already the head of her own empire. She goes in and is like the recruiter and the mentor to Evelyn Tremble, flipping the gender roles of the time.
Ooh.
Revolutionary. Whoa.
Whoa. Did you know Casino Royale invented feminism?
There's another one in the bag.
Okay, so what I wrote down at least is then we get to the Q and we get to the elves, or the one elf, excuse me. And then he gives him a...
Well, this is like a whole built-up joke of, there's somebody following me. Oh, yes, there's somebody following you at every turn. They're covert. Actually, it's not covert. I can see him following me right there. Oh, that's not your tail. That's just our security man. And he's dressed like an elf for no apparent reason. And it cuts back to him. And we're just like, what's the joke here, though?
And then Q gives him... I wrote this down. It's a two-way radio television wristwatch. It's an American idea. They got it from one of their comic scripts. So it's a little funny. They want you to know that it's funny.
I like Paul defending this movie and just like the dead.
Wait, hold on. Who wrote this? Oh my God, Paul, were you the 24th writer on Casino Royale?
I had this tied up in the WGA for months. I deserve full credit. They wouldn't give it to me. But I believe right after this, he's just immediately... No, Peter Sellers is with Q. And then David Niven is on a bike in a hat, which would imply that he's in India, even though he's just in like a park.
Yeah.
But he is in India, I think.
Okay, so Matahari and James Bond had a daughter in World War I, who for some reason is only 25 years old in 1967. And she's her mother was a great dancer and a terrible spy. And she's a terrible dancer, so her dad, who never admits he's her dad, David Niven, he says, well, then she'll be a great spy. So he does go to India, to track her down.
Yes, and then we have this really kind of cool, really elaborate dance number that's something out of like The King and I.
This is the first one of the sets that gets really like opulent.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, that's where the budget went.
Which kind of distracts you from the fact this whole dance number is Mata Bond trying to seduce her deadbeat dad.
It's horrible. At one point, they're having tea, and Mata Bond says something like, you know, if you weren't my dad, I would fuck your brains out. And you're like, what kind of fucked up movie is this?
Oh, and then she's like offering him hookah, and she's going like, you have 2 cups of this tea, you'll be stoned off your ass.
Right. She gives him the hookah. He's like, no, I don't smoke that anymore. I'm sorry. And then she says, if you weren't my dad, I think I'd fancy you. And he says, that's very good of you, my dear. He's so polite.
Yeah. Okay, so in the scene before with Hatley, he's just like, well, I'm something of a godfather to her, and she took my name. But then you find out this might have been a lie, or they forgot on set. Either one could be true. But then he introduces himself as her father. And she's like, Daddy!
Daddy. Yes.
Yeah.
So she's not confused.
I thought that he was like lying.
Yeah, I got that he was lying because he had that celibate image to protect.
Yeah, I'll give Charles Feldman the benefit of the doubt on this one. Although he was probably just snorting some sort of new drug of the stomach of Ursula Andress while they were shooting this scene.
Right.
Like David Niven Sir James Bond cannot admit that he and Woodrow Wilson are like Eskimo brothers.
Yeah, he can never live up to it. For some reason, Mata needs to go to Berlin.
No, because that's Matahari's spy school. That's why she has to go to Berlin.
Well, it's the it's like the spy school that trains every spy in the world. But first, they go to England, and then they send her off on her way. They send her to Berlin in a cab.
In a London cab.
In a London cab.
This was another exchange of dialogue I wrote down. Berlin, and he says east or west, and she says west, of course, and he says, oh well, that's all right then, and then they go.
And they get to West Berlin, right where Checkpoint Charlie is, and we see that like
West Berlin is Caligari, East Berlin is completely red.
It's barren and red. No, well, West Berlin also has like all the cabarets and like strip joints and is like decadent. And then
it looks like West Berlin looks like One from the Heart. East Berlin is just completely red, and when the camera pans over, it's like, is it a mandolin or something starts playing?
Yeah,
because is it trying to be the third man or something? I don't know.
No, it just let's remember this makes no sense at all, and I hate to compliment this movie, but the German expressionist set is really fucking cool.
Again,
awesome.
Charles K. Feldman and whatever stooge directed this part of the movie, they used their James Bond parody as an excuse to do a loving homage to the 1919 silent film, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, or 1920, I forget the year. Not relevant to the 60s at all, but they're like, we're committing to it. And it looks great.
When they know enough about movies that they're like, what's Germany like? Oh, it's like that movie.
Yes. And also, I will compliment this sequence too, because when Mata Bond starts to seduce the Smithers-like robot character, I'm not...
Yeah, his heart is on a battery of some kind, and he keeps having to, like, smash it a couple times, and they're just like, oh, you're Matahari's daughter! Welcome home!
Well, at first, they don't believe that she's the daughter of Matahari, and she has to prove it by revealing that she's wearing a pseudo-Indian dancer's outfit, which proves that she's the daughter of Matahari.
Yeah. They're like, okay.
Yes. But anyways, I was going to compliment that scene, because it's when she's seducing Waylon Smithers with a thing in his heart. It's one of the only scenes in the movie where it's just exposition properly delivered, with just a character saying it to another character. It's not like they cut and then they're at another location and they explain it there. It's not like they slow some footage down of Ursula Andress twirling around and they ADR her talking. Like, it's one of the only scenes where the character's just telling the other character what his plan is and what's gonna happen next. And I just felt like an elephant sat up from my chest. It was magical to see just a kind of normal scene.
You were liberated. You could breathe again.
The lighting and the camera angles in the sequence, very great. The use of red lighting with the stern woman and the assistant, like the way they use lights and angles, it looks like Suspiria, which is weird because Suspiria didn't come out for another 10 years, but they invented it here.
They're in the decoding room and that's all flashing red lights, but
they go into a couple of different rooms. There's the red room and then there's a white room, isn't there? Something like that?
Something like that.
I don't remember.
And I'll also note that, of course, the 70s Suspiria has the iconic washes of color. The remake of Suspiria has even more, like, vaguely expressionist callbacks and stuff like that, right? Which is...
So there goes another 2 movies Casino Royale inspired.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And along the way, what he is, as Jan said, the relatively effective exposition lays out that they train spies for everybody. They train for both sides, and that Peter Lorre and Bela Lugosi are both communist spies.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that their plan is that they have incriminating photos of world leaders having sex that they're gonna sell to world leaders.
Yes, it's America, England, Russia, and China, right?
the UN Security Council gets to bid on these, although the British seem to not give a shit.
Yeah,
they just want to have tea.
Yeah.
Paul loves this movie. I can already.
The Americans are standing.
The Americans are loud. The Russians and Chinese have red. One side of the room is completely red.
And we get 2 recurring Bond actors. We get the guy who played Kronstein in From Russia with Love. So Kronstein is the head of this auction, and the representative for the Chinese government is Burt Kwok, who played Mr. Ling in Goldfinger, and is also Kato in the Pink Panther movies.
Oh, cool.
Iconic.
Peter Sellers reunion.
And David Niven. Wait, is Kato in the first Pink Panther?
No, he's in A Shot in the Dark.
Is he in the later Pink Panthers where Peter Sellers quit the movies by dying?
I think he is,
David Niven is back. All right.
Oh, and the Inspector Clouseau's assistant in A Shot in the Dark is a casino concierge in Casino Royale as well.
Intriguing.
Cool. Well, cool facts, Jake. But now let's come back to this piece of shit.
Let's get back. So they're auctioning off.
They're auctioning off these photos. They call it Le Chiffre's art collection.
Yes.
Which maybe it is. I don't know. What's her face? Mata is sitting in on this. They don't notice her. And then the battery man is like, what are you doing? No. It's the British guy who I don't know why he's there. But he's like, you should be taking these photos. And she's like, that's a good idea. She pulls them out of the projector and flushes them down the toilet.
Well, you're forgetting that the joke that they set up earlier is that when he drops her off in West Berlin, he keeps asking for his fare, and she just ditches him and goes like, I ain't paying for your fare. And he's like, I want me fare. And then he keeps following her, and then he follows her and goes like, where's me fare? By the way, I work for the British government also. You should take those photos. And then she takes the photos and then starts playing reels of World War II footage.
And then the people there think that real war is happening. It's a horrible joke.
They think that World War III has broken out because they're being shown a film of war.
And the British are resigned to it.
Everyone else is calling their governments to be like, Mr. President, you need to launch the nukes. And the British guy's like, oh, I love it. Get the tea kettle ready. You know, he just wants to talk to his wife.
No, he calls his wife and he's just like, I'm sorry, I can't be home for dinner. Pierce Wall's broken out.
Hey, Vanilla, look, I'm afraid I shan't be able to get back for dinner. Huh? There's all the war's broken out.
Yeah.
and then they escape, and she's like, let's go this way. And she opens the thing that goes into a sewers, and What's New Pussycat starts playing.
What's New Pussycat?
No.
Jen, you're forgetting like the whole action set piece where the robot man comes into her room and goes like, I have to kill you now because you shouldn't have done that. And then she takes out his plugs. He plugs back in his heart wrong to the negative to the positive, goes in reverse, and is incapacitated by going in reverse and bringing down the toilet trap door. And he's just stuck spinning around there for infinity. And then then the German lady comes in and goes like, I got you. And then she pushes the door and she falls back onto the sleeping British guy who they say is not dead. He's just there for some reason.
He's been sleeping since World War I, since he went to bed with Mata Hari, maybe.
Something like that. And then he pulls out his gun and shoots
Oh,
her.
yeah, that's right. The dead German.
Oh, yeah. Down. And then after that, she's all the representatives of the world powers are trying to stop her, and they start playing the Stewie sexy party music.
Yes.
And she's spraying them with a fire extinguisher. The British guy is helping out, punching all the guys. He goes up to the British guy. He goes like, oh, hello, governor. Oh, hello, sir. And then punches him. And then they go outside. And then she tries to escape in the sewers, going like, ooh, let's go down here. And then it starts playing a high-pitched version of What's New Pussycat for some reason.
No.
What the fuck is that?
I don't know what the joke is supposed to mean. Has anyone seen What's New Pussycat?
I actually haven't seen
I've
What's
seen
New
it.
Pussycat. Isn't it a movie that like Woody Allen like derailed and then Peter Sellers took over or something?
Yeah, well, What's New Pussycat is a horrible comedy. It was Woody Allen's first screenplay, but Charles K. Feldman completely like butchered it. And to answer your question, Jake, no, there's nothing in the movie that can mildly relate to that joke.
Yeah, I was like thinking, I'm like, is there like a scene where they're like the Ninja Turtles? They're just like hanging out in the sewer or something like that, and or like that the movie's a piece of shit and it's like in the sewer. What is the joke?
The joke is that Tom Jones is a god who was on an episode of Duck Dodgers.
Yeah, they wanted Tom Jones to also be in this movie, I can only presume. And then they couldn't play that version, I guess.
Yeah.
So then they just get in a car and drive away, right? And the chess man, who is the auctioneer, is this was amusing to me too, that he just opens fire on them in the streets of Berlin, right next to the Berlin Wall, and a cop just walks up and just kind of gives him a stern look, and then he stops.
Oh, yeah. You think that a joke is about to happen, and it just doesn't happen.
Yeah. And then he goes and he has to report to Le Chiffre, because apparently, that kind of makes sense that he works for Le Chiffre.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because it's kind of, I was actually thinking about this. The structure of this is actually very similar to Casino Royale 2006, because the first 45 minutes to an hour of the movie is about nothing to do with the casino. And then at the end of the first act, James Bond thwarts Le Chiffre's plan to make a bunch of money, which makes him desperate enough to go play Baccarat. Much like that movie, the same thing happens when Montalban fucks up the auction that where he's trying to sell like the pornographic pictures to the world powers and stuff. So because of this, Orson Welles has to play Baccarat, and he also blows up Kronstein inside a phone booth, which also blows up a hole in Checkpoint Charlie, leading to a bunch of Eastern Berliners to
That's a pretty good guy.
file through.
That's a pretty good joke.
It's pretty fun.
We're finally getting to Orson Welles, the man, the myth, the legend, also co-writer of this script.
No.
Well, we got a little bit. Okay, another very important scene. A very important scene, which I'm pretty sure I can only explain that they left it in just because they needed to use every piece of footage they had of Peter Sellers.
Yeah.
He just flies into France like a normal guy. He goes through customs. The guy says, "Welcome to France, Monsieur Bond," and he just decks him. And then that's the end of the scene.
Well, and the thing is that it's prefaced because Sir James Bond calls up Vesper and goes like, "Are you sure we can trust Evelyn Tremble? Is he not like a double agent? He just attacked this random person at the French airport." And you know what's even weirder? The second time I watched this today on Laserdisc. The first time was on DVD. This time I had to bust out my Laserdisc. That scene is not in the Laserdisc version for some reason.
Whoa!
But why? None of these scenes
why.
make sense. It's so arbitrary. You could cut any of these scenes.
Yeah.
That one was extraneous.
But yeah, it's incredible. Like I think like the joke is supposed to be that just because he's French, he punches him because
I thought the joke was that he is James Bond, so he's fully inhabiting like the spy role, because they only picked him to be James Bond because he was like a writer on Baccarat, so he feels like he has to overcompensate by being tougher.
He's got to be tougher, maybe.
I feel that was what the Peter Sellers movie was supposed to be.
The only thing this Bond is good at is Baccarat and doing impressions of famous European dictators.
Hey, and certain nationalities, yeah.
Well, we're getting to that. But he decks the French customs guy. Then he meets up with a guy and they go through a car wash where there are women making out with his car.
This is where the opening scene should have gone, because it's that same guy from the opening.
Because if it was in context, it would have made a little more sense, because it seems like the guy is propositioning James Bond for sex, but in fact, they're going through a car wash full of women, which makes that it's straight.
Yeah. Ha!
Then I think...
Speaking of him being straight, I think then what happens is he meets Jacqueline.
Oh yeah, Jacqueline Bisset is in the movie as Mrs. Goodthighs.
Miss Goodthighs.
Peter Sellers apparently shot her in the face with a blank, and she was covered in gunpowder and she was bleeding.
That sounds like him.
Apparently.
Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah, they have this extended scene in a hotel room. I read on Wikipedia, my reputable source for information, that he really, I think he hired Terry Southern specifically to rewrite his scenes, right?
To make it better than Orson Welles.
He was convinced that he needed to be the funniest man in this movie. And I have to assume that they'd all went into this, because this feels like a totally different level of, we're going to parody the kind of seduction scenes in these James Bond films.
Yeah.
In a completely different way than the rest of the movie.
Until the scene just like ends.
She just slips an Alka-Seltzer in his drink.
She puts a gigantic Alka-Seltzer tablet into his drink. He puts another one in, but that doesn't work. So...
And the dream sequence that we get, well, first we get the song James Bond playing at Casino Royale. And they have to fill the scene with something, so they fill it again with outtakes.
Yeah.
There's a scene of Peter Sellers playing a piano on top of Ursula Andress.
Isn't it? It's cards cascading as we see almost like memories of the scene that we've just seen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he's thinking of Vesper Lind while he's with Miss Goodthighs.
Yes. Yeah, and eventually he wakes up and Vesper Lind is there, and he's like, "Why didn't you? My tablet didn't work." But she's like, whatever, and then they move on.
Yeah.
James Bond's not supposed to wear glasses. Get your glasses off, and she throws them in the shower, and that's the scene.
Yeah. And he's like, "Where's Miss Goodthighs?" And she's like, "Oh, I took care of that." And next scene.
Next scene.
Yeah.
Now we're at the Casino Royale.
Yes!
Finally. An hour and 30 minutes into the movie. We're finally at Casino Royale.
We are nearly 2 hours into this, and we're finally at the casino.
We're at the best part of the movie, Orson Welles just dominating his space and just doing bullshit magic tricks to whoever is in the area.
We gotta say, Orson Welles has two conditions to be in this movie. Where that one, he had to sit down. There must never be a scene of him standing up or walking. And two, he had to perform magic, like real in-camera magic. And I love the magic. I love seeing Orson Welles perform magic. I like seeing him sitting in that high chair with that thing in front of it so that he can eat while he's performing. He looks like a giant baby.
Yeah, I mean, I think on a metatextual level as well, it's like, all right, Peter Sellers, James Bond versus Orson Welles, Le Chiffre. How will they face off? They're not just going to play cards. Orson Welles is going to continually do magic tricks, and Peter Sellers is continually going to do ethnic stereotypical accents at him until one of them is victorious.
Always in a different shot, because they could not be on the set at the same time, because Princess Margaret, Queen Elizabeth II's younger sister, came to visit the set, and Peter Sellers thought that they were like best friends, and he was so excited for her to come, and then she blew him off and only talked to Orson Welles, and Peter Sellers swore vengeance.
They couldn't be in the same room together. I think Orson Welles also called Peter Sellers like an amateurish buffoon, and this is when tensions were getting really high, and Peter Sellers literally punched the director in the face.
I like the idea that Orson Welles insulted Peter Sellers, and then Peter Sellers punched the director. Just catching strays.
And they're never in the same shot, and like Peter Sellers is like sarcastically, marvelous, keep going, wow, marvelous.
And Orson's waving the flags of the world.
He's all I want is world peace, and he has like the gels and stuff going on the lights.
You would think that when they get to Casino Royale is when they actually try to start to be a proper parody, but it's actually when the movie just straight up gives up. It's like it has that thing with the flags, and they just like, yeah, fuck it, just put some color filters, some gels in there. I get that could be like, at this point everyone's gonna be high or drunk, and they're gonna start like
much
throwing
like
shit
2001. They calculated it so that the LSD kicks in at a certain point, and that's
Yeah.
when,
Right.
when Orson pulls out the flags from his handkerchief. It's like the Stargate in 2001.
That's the Stargate sequence.
Which, again, came after this movie. This invented 2001. Anyway, continue.
What happened to that woman Orson got rid of? Orson made a woman disappear. She never comes back.
No, she's dead. She's dead.
This is nothing but, what does he say? This is nothing but a regular shard or something.
If the prestige
Or
taught
Shaw.
me anything, is that if you don't bring the person back, you're a shit magician. Explain that, Orson.
So the game goes south. Peter Sellers beats Orson at Baccarat, which makes conventional linear sense to anyone who's read the book. Then,
Which is the only thing that happened. Like, this chunk of 20 minutes is the only thing that resembles the novel Casino Royale by Ian Fleming.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And then Orson goes away, and Evelyn Tremble tells the cab driver, follow that car, which he does without Evelyn Tremble. Ha ha.
But he's already dressed up in racer getup, so the joke makes
he's already
no
dressed.
sense.
Okay, and also what's weird is that they do the same gag in the Pink Panther Strikes Again.
It's a very old gag.
And it's much better in that. It's a very old gag, but it's done better. This is like a wide shot.
Yeah.
The guy runs off way too soon, and you're just like, oh, that was a joke.
It's like an awkward two-shot. So many jokes in this movie are just awkward two shots where it's just people standing confused at what
Troy, the
happened.
art of comedy is in a wide. We all know this.
Comedy is based on pain, as a wise man once said.
Oh yes, all comedy is based on any sort of pain. Also, I want to ask, why does the casino look like Vegas?
Oh yeah, that's true. The casino does look like Vegas. Why does it look like Vegas?
This is a Hollywood production, all right? This ain't no fancy European.
Casino Royale makes you long for the bold, unifying artistic vision of To Boldly Flee.
Troy, we're not bringing this in.
You know what? I'll say it.
No.
To boldly flee makes more sense and has more direction.
It has
than
pathos.
Casino Royale.
There are character arcs in To Boldly Flee.
Having not seen that 12-hour film of icon of slow cinema, there was another funny exchange where he's in the middle of the card game. Evelyn Bond is talking to Vesper, I believe, and she's saying he's trying to avoid losing, wouldn't he? And she says, yes, of course. And he says, how? And she says, by trying to kill you. And he says, as in dead? And she says, yes. And then he's like, So, anyway, the idea...
Silence.
I'm glad that this movie entertained you, Paul.
Paul's trying to sell us on this movie.
I like how me and Jake's notepads are just, Jan's is all question marks, and Paul's is just like, ha
Another thing that Casino Royale invented, Orson Welles as Le Chiffre uses X-ray glasses to cheat at cards. Where did the X-ray glasses show up in the later Bond movies? The World Is Not Enough. And he wears the same kind of purple tinted glasses.
Wait.
In The World Is Not Enough, and he uses the glasses to look at like people holding guns under their jackets and to look at brassieres of women passing by.
Okay, but another thing I think is notable, not a line, is he wins the money, he beats Le Chiffre, and for some reason he's friends with a guy at the casino and who has a room full of tiger stuff, and when they leave the room, the tiger head is licking its lips.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
God damn it, Paul. I wanted so badly to be the one to mention the tiger with the tongue.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Tiger. Oh.
And it's just like, but then we find out that the tiger's like eye or something has a button that opens up a trap door. So you're like, is this like a sentient what is this? What is this tiger?
It's another robot like the Battery Man.
I'm telling you, once we get into the casino, this is when the movie has just completely given up.
Yeah. They are running out of footage.
Stuff.
They can no longer hide the fact that Peter Sellers, they only got a couple more scenes of him to use, and they've given up. And it's a breakdown.
They're flailing. Well, before we leave the casino, two other things that I think are relevant to the series as a whole. First of all, when he goes into the casino, he meets the tiger guy, but he also meets the guy where he's like, here's a briefcase full of $1 bajillion. And the guy's like, I'm your biggest fan. Will you sign a thing? Continuing the theme that half of James Bond's usefulness as a spy is that he is a celebrity within the universe, right? Which is established in From Russia with Love.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Second of all...
Yeah.
No. But...
So this film continues the fact that James Bond is a celebrity, right, within universe. Second of all, this film, of course, canonizes the idea that this is a title, right? That it is passed, a torch that is passed, right?
But it's not canonized because that's never been a canon idea, Paul.
That's bullshit, yeah.
Paul, if you're going to be on this podcast, if you mention that James Bond is a code name, you will be dragged out in the street and shot. I'm sorry. This is not a thing.
The codename theory, it's like the bigger Luke theory of the James Bond series.
Yeah. They almost canonized it in Die Another Day. The director wanted to, but we'll get to that eventually. Why
it would make no sense, but then it wouldn't
doesn't
explain
make any sense.
Theorize only. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Okay, so can we leave the casino? We're gonna come back to it.
Okay, so Evelyn Trumbull, James Bond 007, enters his Formula 3 and drives card cut to...
It spins. There's a spinny card.
Spinny card. He is now in the lair of Le Chiffre. They completely removed a possible car chase, and now he is being tortured by Le Chiffre. But it's not like the book where his balls are beaten by a carpet beater.
But he has a chair with no seat in it, and Orson Welles goes, I could beat your balls with a carpet
and the carpet beater's there.
Yeah, everything's there.
That's a gag that's kind of amusing if you're already familiar with the book.
Yeah.
He falls into the chair, and it goes red for a second, like in Marnie, and we don't know what that means.
I'm imagining some guy who's in a trench coat who really loved Casino Royale, and he's watching this scene, and he's like confused, but then he sees the chair and the thing, and he's like, oh my God, they're gonna do it. And then they don't.
He does a Leo DiCaprio meme that...
Yeah, he's just like there. I recognize that.
It's a thing from the book and starts crying.
It's going to be like a Kevin Smith reaction where it's a picture of him cry, like when he was in the chair and the chair had no seat and the carpet beater was there, I cried.
Possibly also in a nod towards some kind of accuracy, Peter Sellers starts doing Scottish all of a sudden.
Yeah, in this movie, everyone starts doing Scottish all of a sudden.
I feel like we talked through the fact that there's just a very important scene missing in this movie. That
the scene where he's captured by Le Chiffre. Yes.
Yeah, because now we're getting to the part where Peter Sellers, as you might imagine from all the behavior we've described, quit the movie. So
we got to go into the torture scene because they did shoot the torture scene. Orson Welles as Le Chiffre projects images of beautiful, scantily clad women into his mind.
Now this is the Stargate sequence.
Yeah, and then this is where it truly gets cerebral. This is where
it gets really dense.
This is where the LSD kicks in. All of a sudden, Bond is not in the chair anymore. He's in like this empty room, and he's hearing bagpipes. And he covers his ears. The bagpipes cease. Uncovers his ears, the bagpipes keep going, and he looks out the window. He's in like a ramshackle like hut where there's nothing but smoke outside, and he sees an army of bagpipe players, and he looks through a little hole in the window, and he sees himself screaming, "Help!"
But he's not actually screaming help, it's a word bubble.
The word flies at you, much like Yellow Submarine, which had yet to come out.
Stop this. Stop trying to say
it was the 60s. Everyone had the same drugs.
I'm just saying.
The movie Help came out in 1965 or 60.
This film did not, you're right, Troy, this film did not invent the word help.
That was the Beatles. That was the Beatles.
That was stolen from John Lennon and Paul McCartney.
Now we come to Peter O'Toole, right?
Yeah, no. So it's basically the room from 2001: A Space Odyssey, where Peter Sellers looks at himself from outside of the building he's in, and then now he's manifested into the being outside. And there are a bunch of bagpipe players. One of them is Peter O'Toole, who asked Peter Sellers, "Are you Richard Burton?" And then Peter Sellers replies, "No, I'm Peter O'Toole." And then he grabs Peter O'Toole's junk. Peter O'Toole just says, God bless, and leaves the movie.
No, Peter O'Toole grabs his junk and goes, then by God, you're the finest man who ever lived. And then he leaves the movie.
Yeah.
Wait, because Peter Sellers says that he is Peter O'Toole.
Yeah.
And Peter O'Toole says, you're the greatest man who ever lived, and presumably you got a big dick, and good luck.
Why were there so many junk jokes that I just apparently missed in this movie?
Because James Bond has sex, Jan.
You're focused on the eyes, Jan.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you're thinking that this is a hallucination, but Vesper shows up, who is not kidnapped anymore, and she's playing the bagpipes, and her bagpipes have a machine gun. She mows down all of the bagpipe players, including Peter O'Toole, presumably.
All right, we're both right. Peter O'Toole goes, you're the finest man that ever breathed, wearing the glasses from What's New Pussycat. And then Peter Sellers grabs his bagpipes like tube. And then Peter O'Toole grabs a little thing on his kilt and goes, God bless. And then leaves the movie.
So they grab each other's metaphorical dicks.
Yes, they grab each other's.
Okay.
They grab each other's cocks. Peter O'Toole is mowed down.
I never got
in cold blood by Vesper Lind.
Vesper Lind kills everyone.
Vesper Lind kills everyone and tells Evelyn Tremble,
Mr. Tremble, never trust a rich spy.
and mows down the star of the movie.
And then we have a still shot of the shot that we got right before, but without Peter's.
Yeah. He's just amongst the hundreds of dead bagpipe players.
And then Orson Welles, who is still sitting down.
Smirsh contacts him on his TV, goes like, where's the money? He's like, no, give me more time. I'll have that check soon. And they're like, no, Orson Welles. And a man is walking to camera on his television screen. The man pops out of the television screen, shoots him in the face. Orson Welles falls on the controls, and the whole thing explodes.
Yeah.
So, what's interesting about this movie, and I think part of why it's so hated.
Oh, please enlighten me.
Is the tone, because this movie is like a death march. So often in this movie, large quantities of people are just killed, like just incessantly. Yeah. You just watch them die, and then the movie like lingers, and then it blows them up. And it's such a weird comedy because, okay, bad jokes are one thing, but they're like killing people all the time. And you're like, what am I feeling?
And at this point, we've completely, I mean, apart from your brain cells dying and the characters dying, also what has been dying is focus. Because at this point, we've completely forgotten about David Niven. It's been like 40 minutes without him.
We've also, please note, we are in an adaptation of Casino Royale. James Bond is dead. Chiffre is dead. We have 30 minutes to go, folks.
Well, Evelyn Tremble is dead. Peter Sellers is dead. He ain't coming back until the end. So the next scene is Mata Bond, whose hair is now short for some reason.
Now she looks like Twiggy.
She is off with David Niven. She's like, I'm going to go walk around because David Niven won't let her into MI6 or MI5 or whatever the fuck it is. It's not MI6 in this movie. It's MI5, I guess.
And then a fucking spaceship shows up. I hate this movie.
A British Royal Guard kidnaps Mata Bond.
Okay.
They go into a spaceship. And the spaceship flies away.
All the Londoners smile and wave at the UFO. The UFO goes a few miles over water. A baby UFO comes out of the big UFO. It goes on the water into a secret base that is
in Casino Royale.
Which is weird because we just saw the secret base in Casino Royale blow up.
But it's not the secret base though in Casino Royale. It might be some other base that Le Chiffre just has.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Le Chiffre could be at a second location.
He could be at a second location. Smersh is a giant, not to be confused with Smiertspionum, the actual Russian spy wing of the KGB. This is Smersh that is run by Dr. Noah inside of Casino Royale.
It's so funny to me that the Eon series went out of its way to be so nice to Smurfs. Like, oh, Smurfs, It's always Spectre. Smurfs never did anything. And then this movie is just like, this is all the work of the Russian government.
Smersh is a different thing. It's not Smeart Spionum Smersh. It's a different Smersh.
Different Smersh.
The acronym
It's
is
the
different in
Smersh
this.
with a flying saucer.
Yes.
So Bond has to fight a bunch of Scotsmen and run through a bunch of sets that have swirly lines on them.
And there's a fight scene. They get into the secret lair. They find out the real culprit behind this. Who is the identity of Dr. Noah? Then Jimmy Bond.
So long, suckers.
The most evil person in this movie, in real life and in the movie.
Is he the most evil? Yeah, I guess John Huston was only allegedly friends with the Black Dahlia killer.
He's not the Black Dahlia, as far as
I know.
Allegedly, as far as we know.
Some people would say this is a blessing, but this really fucking pissed me off. They bring Woody Allen back after an hour of not appearing, and they make him not talk.
Well, no, because he has a psychological reaction to his uncle, Sir James Bond, where he feels so inferior to him that he can't speak. So he's miming a bunch of funny shit.
The redeeming quality about Woody Allen is that he's good with words. That's it. He's a fucking absolute worm of a man. His dialogue is good.
What do you want? A monologue from Woody Allen, or do you want to see him on like a horsey yelling at a nude woman between giant metal straps?
We haven't gone back to Dalliah Lavi and the fucking thing. That's next.
Yeah. Who now? She is like the main James Bond. That's the weirdest part of this movie. Is like that woman who was in one scene is now naked on a stretcher, and Woody Allen's like, I'm gonna make you love me.
Oh, and what is Woody Allen's plan? We haven't discussed Woody Allen's plan.
He is going to release a gas that will kill every man in the world taller than 4'9".
Yes.
So he will be the tallest man in the world, so women will date him.
Yes. So his plan is essentially, lusting over women and being inappropriate with them. So it's the same plan that he has in real life. So another parallel with real life Woody Allen and Dr. Noah.
Worth noting, another thing that made me smile, he has David Niven's smiling face on a balloon. And
he punches.
And then it punches him back.
He can't even punch a balloon of his father.
His uncle,
excuse me.
Well, as far as we know.
There's also a bit where he wanders in. He's got like a bunch of people working for him, and he comes in, and then the stage rises to reveal more guys for just a second, and it plays Glory, Glory, Hallelujah, and then it goes back down, and then the scene continues.
Which probably costs an exorbitant amount of money. That's only on screen for 5 seconds.
That shot is the thesis of this movie, which is burn money. You know, it's like you could have accomplished that shot by the choir just walking into frame. But no, they had to do it like that.
You don't even need the choir. You could just have it be the soundtrack. You could just have it be like just in the background. You start hearing Glory, Glory, Hallelujah.
Change in the light cue or something. But they're like, we already have all this cast. We already have all this money. Fuck it. Let's just have Woody Allen do the speech and a contraption comes up. I fucking hate this. I can't believe I'm saying this, but every single second that Woody Allen is on screen is golden.
Yeah, Woody Allen and Orson Welles, I admit, are the two highlights of the movie for me, because they're just being talented and good at their jobs.
Yep.
They're doing their shtick. Everybody's coming to do their shtick. Yeah. But yeah, it turns out that, I mean, I guess, I don't know, a little bit like, I mean, in Thunderball, our lady gets to shoot Largo at the end. In this, it's like entirely the detainer, right?
Yeah, the detainer.
A character that we've seen for like 5 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah. She makes quite an impression, though. Dalliah Lavi, like her scene, her one scene that she gets at the beginning, does stick with you a little bit. I will give it that.
Doesn't. I didn't remember her at all.
Do you guys think Woody Allen wrote the ending of the movie and he specified that whoever was James Bond in his scene had to be like completely nude and let him hit on them, and they all had to draw straws?
Oh, apparently there was a story about this. I did read. So, well, actually, no, I didn't read. It was in the featurette on the DVD. Val Guest said that They were trying to figure out whether or not Dalliah Lavi would be actually nude under the bars or that they would have like a thong and a little tiny bikini. And they asked her, like, what would you feel comfortable with? And she was like, I don't know, Woody? And Woody just slunked off to the side in embarrassment.
Oh,
And
cool.
it was like, ooh, it turned red and like slunked off. But they ended up just doing a thong and a bikini.
But yeah, no, that was totally a Woody Allen call.
Yeah, that was Woody Allen's call.
I'm 100% sure.
So she defeats him by getting him to swallow a bomb. The bomb that he was going to use on all the tall men.
And he burps a cartoon.
He will burp a cartoon smoke 100 times and then he will detonate into a nuke.
Yeah, a small atomic device.
After this point, I had said before that the movie had already given up. After this point is when the movie actually gives up.
Then it's basically, again, I think this film may have invented the DreamWorks dance party sequence at the end of the film.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Shrek in the Swamp karaoke dance party.
Oh my God, Jake, are you on the ground?
Jake, I like to move it. I like to move it.
Shrek goes a lot to this movie.
Shrek goes a lot to this movie. First of all, before we even get to the dance party, Frankenstein is in this film.
Yeah, Frankenstein is in this film.
Oh, do you know what's even better?
David Niven is in this film as a clone of himself, shooting a machine gun.
Yes,
it's true.
But do you know who plays the Frankenstein monster?
David Prowse. It's his first appearance as Frankenstein.
David Prowse, who was Darth Vader.
He's also the Frankenstein monster in Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. He was originally cast to play Super Pooh.
Yeah, Super
Which
Pooh.
was a giant Winnie the Pooh. In a superhero outfit.
You know, obviously, this is the year 2020, so we can't do this right now, but I imagine in the year 2023, when anyone can make a Winnie the Pooh movie because of the copyright law.
Oh, right. It's
Super
public
Pooh
domain.
is just waiting to be made.
Is David Prowse still alive?
No, he's dead.
He died recently in the future.
Okay, good. I mean, not good, but you know what I mean.
You know, some people say that the working title for Casino Royale 1967 was Super Poo because it's super shit. Anyway.
But from here on out, these are my notes.
Okay.
Frankenstein, question mark.
Yep.
Monkey, question mark.
Yep.
Bubbles, question mark.
Yep.
John Paul Belmondo, question mark.
Yep.
William Holden again,
Yep.
question mark.
Yep.
Wait, yeah.
John Paul Belmondo shows up and he's trying to translate merde.
Yeah, he is a French cop.
He's a French legionnaire and he's trying to translate merde, which is shit. But then he says like ouch or something.
Don't care. What? The books. Which? Ah!
Why is there a monkey?
Yep.
He's having a hard time. There is a monkey with a blonde wig. Things start to get kicked up a notch before the animals when they say the American aid, sir, it's arrived, and they cut the stock footage of cowboys
and Native Americans as well.
Native Americans leap out of a 007 jet.
Yes, Native Americans have a 007 jet.
Keystone Cop show up. George Raft, an old gangster actor from the 30s, is there just
This is
flipping
actually
a coin.
legit funny when he's first you see him just flipping the coin. And you're like, oh, okay. And then they cut back to him. And he's just like, somebody betrayed me. I shot myself.
No, he's like, isn't he like
Something
somebody's
like-
been shot? Me. And like his gun fired backwards and shot him?
And then he slumps over or something.
I've been framed. This gun shoots backwards. I just killed myself.
Why is there a monkey?
Yep.
There's a monkey, and there's a lot of bubbles in this scene.
Yes, lots of
Bubbles
bubbles.
the monkey, invented by Casino Royale. Anyway,
We've pointed out that by now this is fighting that has spilled onto the main floor of Casino Royale. So David Niven's like doing flips.
He's also kind of dancing a little bit.
The Native Americans are doing a dance.
They start dancing to the camera.
The roulette thing is spinning like a flying saucer, shooting bubbles and flares. Woody Allen is hiccuping cartoon smoke. There's a seal with a giant 007 tag on it.
Yeah, the seal's just there.
Oh yeah, there's people in an airplane.
Yeah, the Native Americans were all 007.
Right. I was confusing with the cowboys. But why is there a monkey?
Yep.
Who's the monkey?
Yep.
There's a monkey there, but there's also William Holden, who's alive.
Does the seal and the monkey, do they have anything to do with each other?
To answer your question, Jan, the monkey appears because the roulette wheel is a small UFO and it levitates.
Oh, you're
and then
right.
the monkey is underneath it.
Oh, right.
And anyway, but the Native Americans have 007, the SEALs have 007. I kind of interpreted this almost in a Spider-Verse-y context of we are all 007, you might say.
Yeah, I think that's what they're trying to do.
Another movie it inspired.
Another movie
everyone's
inspired.
James Bond.
We can all wear the mask.
We can all have sex with many people and be tall.
And then Vesper comes back and she's like, my plan was to get you here. And apparently this was a late addition because they're like, we need to have some sort of through line. And Val Guest was like, I'll direct scenes we can only get David Niven and Ursula Andress. So I'll do like a through line involving them. And then they have this scene where she's like, this was my plan. And it's for love or something like that. And then it just stops because, you know, the Native Americans are dancing. People are fighting. The cowboys are shooting. The Keystone Cops are there. John Paul Belmondo is saying merde a lot. George Raft shoots himself.
Wait. I forgot to clarify. Did they ever actually rescue Mata Bond? I think they did.
Yeah, no, they did.
Okay.
They did.
They got her. Okay, good.
Yeah, no, and then Cooper is trying to get her out, but they're so distracted by the chaos. And Bond knows that the place is about to blow up, but he's just distracted by everything going on. That they forget that Woody Allen is a weapon of mass destruction.
Just like in real life.
He burps his final couple burps.
3, 2.
And the whole place explodes, killing everyone inside.
And our final scene, all the Bonds, Angels.
7 James
and
Bonds
then,
at Casino Royale.
Yes, everyone's dead.
And then Jimmy Bond is there and they're like, get out of here. And then he sinks.
No, Peter Sellers comes back.
Peter Sellers comes back via stock footage. Okay, so this is even crazier. Apparently there were earlier prints of the movie where Peter Sellers just came back. They found like a still of him and they inserted him into the group shot with the other angels.
Yeah, it was just, or wasn't it a cardboard cutout?
It was a cardboard cutout or something like that. And
it's
then
the first deep fake.
Yeah, it was the first deep fake. And then for some reason they found alternate footage from the scene where he's being tortured with the bagpipe players of him like just blowing at something off camera. And so they took that and in later prints, and the only one that exists, because I haven't seen this other version, but now how it ends is they're up in heaven. Woody Allen is there too in heaven. Then Peter Sellers sees him and literally blows him to hell. The end.
I was gonna say the only thing that this movie got right was that it depicted Woody Allen going to hell.
Yes.
That was correct. I mean, you're sad that everyone died, but you know, Woody Allen went to hell.
Can a movie be that bad if Woody Allen ends up in hell at the end?
Yes, it can.
Yes, it can. This was terrible. I got a cultural note to make about the Woody Allen James Bond. This is in comic books. I don't know how many people here are familiar with Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
I don't listen to hip hop.
James Bond is a major villain in the comic book, and he's called Jimmy Bond. And he fakes the Dr. No adventure, and at one point the characters go, well, that explains the thing in Jamaica, which is from this movie. But then in the last installment of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Jimmy Bond, James Bond, has survived through the ages as a decrepit old man, and he's had like Connery, Moore, Craig, Brosnan, Dalton, Lazenby. They're all his doubles. But he also has another double who's like the janitor at the James Bond squad, and it's Woody Allen James Bond. So James Bond discovers the Fountain of Youth, and he makes the Woody Allen James Bond take him to it. And there's this panel where Jimmy Bond becomes the young James Bond again, and he immediately shoots the Woody Allen James Bond in the back of the head, like on instinct. And anyway, that's another legacy of this movie, is that there's a panel out there of that.
we're cutting all of this out. But anyway.
No, but it's actual information. I have something to contribute to the
Our listeners
podcast.
don't need any of this context.
I am the most curious. I've been dying to ask this question because so Paul, whenever you talked about gags upon this movie, you looked like an orphan child getting more Oliver Twist slop in his bowl. Yeah, you just look so delighted. What did you think of this fucking old porridge of a movie?
Look, here's the thing. This may or may not be the year 2020, or maybe the year 2023, in which there was a film that we were told was really, really, really bad, and it was called The Flash. And I sat there and watched the first 20 minutes. I'm like, wait a minute, this wasn't is this movie fine? And then it gets a lot worse. Here I am watching the Scottish stuff, and I'm like,
Well, because we all know that Paul is racist against the Scottish.
We all know Paul's a self-loathing Scotsman. This is all true about Paul.
Well, it's a little sensitive area, I don't like what they're saying about my people shooting at exploding birds. That we don't need that stereotype out there. But honestly, I mean, as far as a movie that is 5 movies, is a Frankenstein of a film.
With Frankenstein's monster in it.
Yeah. Frankenstein of a film, as far as that goes, I had a lot more fun than I expected. I understand, I mean, much like Southland Tales, I understand why this isn't a midnight movie, because number one, it's kind of overwhelming, and number two, the only people that give a shit are James Bond fans, and they hate this. But it is a perfect LA Circuit midnight movie. It is absolute madness. It's loud and bizarre and has a lot of cameos and is very psychedelic.
How dare you use the name of Southland Tales to try to sway us?
No. It is not Southland Tales.
I'm not saying it's as good as Southland Tales.
I question your sanity.
I feel like Bruce Wayne in The Dark Knight Rises. How dare you use Rachel's name to get me to think a certain way?
No, Southland Tales is the product of one true visionary. This is not, unless his name is Feldman.
What's interesting about this movie for me is, especially as someone who's into older Hollywood, this movie is what happens all the legends of Hollywood pre-1970 worked on this movie. And this is what they made. So it's fascinating. This movie is like if the Hollywood threw up on you.
This was the swan song for old Hollywood before new Hollywood came in.
It's some of the old icons and I guess a few of the new ones, and they're all kind of struggling to be hip in a way that is very uniquely late 60s,
But also World War I.
I did say earlier that the only movie that surpassed this in levels of badness was Epic Movie, but I wouldn't even dare to say that this was the inception of what's those fucking pricks, Aaron Seltzer.
Yeah, Seltzer and Friedberg.
I mean, those are just shitty topical references. This is just psychedelic nonsense.
Yeah, there's really talented people who saw James Bond. They saw the 1966 Batman. They did a lot of drugs for the first time, and they're like, we can do this. And they couldn't.
And it really feels like slowly going insane because it starts out kind of normal. And little by little, the movie just you can feel the editor losing his mind in that editing room and just starting to fuck around. By the end, we end in a DreamWorks dance party.
It's kind of incredible to see a movie with all these people in it, including John Huston, and they're just missing scenes, right? There's just stuff that didn't get shot.
Real missing, yeah.
It's so interesting because they told the directors, don't worry about making the movie fit, because they thought if it was a nightmare, it would work better.
Because that's what the kids are into. They're into LSD. They'll watch all your famous stars basically burn money in a giant bonfire on screen.
Bonfire.
Oh!
This movie made money.
Yeah.
Wait.
It did. It was a big hit.
It
I'm looking this
actually
up.
was a hit.
Yes,
It was a hit.
Yes,
It made like $40 million. It actually made like a shit ton of money.
Oh my God! 4 times its budget. Oh, the production company was Famous Artists Productions, not Famous Players. Famous Players was the company that became Paramount. I know that was bothering everyone. Oh my God! Wait, guys, we didn't talk about the cinematographer for this movie was Nicholas Roeg.
What? Nicholas Roeg?
One of the 4.
Yeah,
I
he
think there's
shot
5
this
directors
movie.
in 4D. I noticed him in the credits. Yeah,
I noticed him in the credits too, but I forgot.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
This movie's literally all my heroes taking a giant dump in my face.
Yeah, like this is the one movie Orson Welles and Billy Wilder teamed up on, and
I guess I don't know how the snowball starts rolling, but it's like one of those things where it's like, why are all these people in this movie, including Marlon Brando? And it's like, oh, because they all wanted to be in a movie with Marlon Brando, right? Like there's a few of those, right?
Yeah.
So was it Orson or was it like?
I think it probably was Sellers.
It was John Huston.
Well, it was John Huston, Sellers, and then they're like Orson Welles, and then it's like those 3.
Yeah.
And then they can pretty much get anybody to be in a movie, right? Yeah.
And then they're also like, oh, we're also going to get like 4 other directors besides John Huston. Oh, John Huston's now going to act in the movie briefly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then from that, you get your William Holden and your George Rafts and your John Paul Belmondos and your Ursula Andress.
We all know that at this point that all you had to do to get Orson Welles in your movie was pay him with champagne and beef Wellington. But what the fuck? How did they get?
They supplied him with boxes of fudgesicles.
Well, what movie do we think Casino Royale was trying to fund? Was Orson trying to make The Deep? Was he trying to make The Immortal Story? Like, he did a lot of
Immortal Story.
I think he was just trying to fund his retirement to Chinchon, Spain, and eat his way to death.
Interestingly enough, I'm reading the behind the scenes of it all, and I am seeing that there is a director breakdown. John Huston directed 38 minutes of the movie. Ken Hughes, who I believe also directed Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, another Ian Fleming property a year later, did 25 minutes. McGrath did 20 minutes. Paris did 20 minutes. And Val Guest, who got all the blame for it, only did 26 minutes. So John Huston technically directed a plurality of the movie.
It's the classic John Huston, one for them, one for me. But the one for them is like this misshapen, like aborted fetus of a James Bond parody.
Was this the year after John Huston made The Bible in the Beginning? Have you guys ever seen that John Huston movie from like 1968?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so John
Parts of
Huston went crazy in the 60s. So a year before Casino Royale, he made The Bible in the Beginning, which was his plan to make a whole series about the Bible. And he plays Noah in it, and he decided Noah should be like a Keystone Cop slapstick Charlie Chaplin guy. So the rest of the movie is very serious, and in the middle it's just John Huston and elephants going, whoa!
Wow.
It gets to Abraham. George C. Scott is Abraham.
I have an interesting question for the group to ponder. Is this the worst thing Woody Allen has ever done, or is it,
You know my answer, Jan. This is one of the best things he's ever done.
Yeah, this is probably up there, honestly.
Honestly.
Okay, look, I
My
admit
goodness.
technically Blue Jasmine is probably a better film. Would I rather watch Casino Royale over Blue Jasmine? I'd probably have to think about it.
Oh my God.
Jesus Christ.
There we go.
I'm just saying.
All right. Casino Royale, very bad, not good. It is a movie that I like to inflict on my friends to test my friendships with them.
Although it turns out you may have found the wrong mark because
I failed miserably because Paul because he's watching
an insane
just
person.
such terrible movies in the year 2023 or 2020 or whatever. Paul is so desperate for like any sort of like anything different. Basically, it's just like I just need some sort of different sensation other than being like shit on my face. And then this movie's like a kick in the balls. And he's like, oh my God, at least it's not shitting on my face.
I feel something.
After, years of having you people subject me to however many Halloween movies there have been, literally anything's going to look good, honestly.
Paul, no one on this podcast has subjected you to Halloween movies. Those are the others.
All right.
You're a man wandering the desert, and after days of not getting any water, John Hughes pisses in your mouth, and you
again.
Take it gladly.
John Hughes? What did John Hughes do to you, Jan?
Well, that's for another time.
We talked about our final thoughts. Do we want to give rankings? We'll do number, score, and ranking, and then Jan. We did toupees for the Sean Connery movies. Do we have anything for this, Jan?
Yes, we have a toupee for him.
But it's not Sean Connery's toupee.
Wait, I'll still give it a 10. It's one of the best things in the movie.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Well, you guys give your ratings first. I have some.
I'll go first. I'll take it. So I give this movie a 2 out of 10. It is really bad, but it is fascinating to see a lot of my cinematic heroes, even including Ben Hecht, who was like a screenwriter in the Silent Age, like see them all work together and make a nightmare that is very colorful and is very silly, and it holds your attention, but this movie is very bad. It is not a good film. Its heart is in a bad place, and it does not do good things, and it's very bad. 2 out of 10. There will be at least 2 movies we watch coming up that I believe are worse than this movie.
No.
I don't think so.
Absolutely not.
No amount of Haitian racism can compare to this.
It is below Thunderball. Thunderball is better than this movie.
Thank you.
A bold statement.
At least you haven't gone like full Paul crazy. Speaking of which, Paul, toupee, your ranking and number, score.
Toupee, I clocked it. I dare say.
It can only be regarded as a heirloom.
I saw that one coming. I was delighted that it was a plot point. That it got its own burial service. Which is really all you need to know.
We gotta replace Paul.
So, thumbs up on that. I mean, I can't say the movie is exactly good. So far, it is the worst, but I give it my classic so bad it's good designation, which is a 2 out of 5, 4 out of 10.
Whoa!
Okay.
That's the highest rating anyone's ever given Casino Royale.
Congratulations, Casino Royale.
You did it, Casino Royale. You got something more than a 3 out of 10.
You found your audience at long last.
Yeah, like I said before, I inflict this movie because it is painful to watch. It is a movie bereft of laughs. There are a couple good, funny scenes. I can count 3 times that a joke actually works. But most of the time, the parody doesn't work. The movie gets lost in its own indulgence. Down to it, it is boring. Most of the time, it's one of those movies you could have on in the background, do other things, and you come back to it and you haven't missed anything. And in fact, you're probably in a better position to enjoy the movie because it is all over the place. It makes absolutely no sense. With the exception of a few funny bits, it is a giant bore, a 2.5 hour long bore, much like this episode of this podcast.
Hell yeah! Actually, Casino Royale is like 115 minutes or 119 minutes?
No, it's longer than that.
Oh, it's 174 minutes. What did I watch? No, wait, this is the Bible in the beginning. I'm sorry, folks. I did watch that movie too.
It's 4.5 hours long.
It's 131 minutes long. This podcast is longer than Casino Royale.
Yes, but it is long, it is boring, it is stupid. I give this a 2 out of 10. It's a disaster. The toupee is a 10 out of 10, though, easily. Worst Bond movie so far. Possibly the worst Bond movie of all time. Jan, carry us home.
Well, first of all, toupee, I agree, 10 out of 10. It's not only a toupee, it transcends being a toupee. It's the inciting incident of the whole thing. And I like seeing one of my favorite directors wear that fucking thing. But to give my rating, I must tell you my tale of woe. that I suffered through yesterday. So, I am a proud practitioner of the Jewish tradition of having really bad acid reflux. So, yesterday morning, I woke up with heartburn. Normal heartburn. The normal amount of heartburn that I wake up to. And as I'm watching this movie, my heartburn starts getting a little worse. And then it starts getting unusually worse. And then I literally feel a horrible pressure in my chest. I felt like I was having a heart attack. And my throat was burning like it's never burned before. By the time of the party at the end, I could not breathe. And this is a real story. Melissa can corroborate it.
Oh my God.
Wait, so you're saying that watching Casino Royale is like injecting Big Macs into your veins?
It's like David Lynch meeting with George Lucas and looking like a Wookiee.
And it was exactly that. I had to call my uncle, who's a doctor, because of course he is. And he told me, you have to go to the emergency room right now. And I did.
Wait, what?
And I went to the emergency room, and the doctor that was at the emergency room told me, did something trigger this reaction that you can think of? And with all the confidence in the world, I told him, yes, it was Casino Royale from 1967, the only movie that's ever made me end up in the fucking hospital.
Join the Casino Royale fun movement.
Well, I have to say...
Oh my God.
And you know what?
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of cinema is to have a reaction on its audience. It doesn't have to be a good reaction. But this was a reaction, so I'm giving this one a 10 out of 10, baby.
Oh my God.
There you go.
The cinema! Casino Royale's legacy lives on.
See, I had been planning for weeks for Paul to have like this reaction of I thought he would come to my door with a gun to my face going like, what did you make me do?
Look what you made me do.
Look what you made me do. And I was saddened when we started this podcast that he liked it. However, the fact that Jan ended up in the hospital because of it,
it makes it all better.
makes it all better.
It's a true story.
I guess some of us are just built different.
Paul is an iron stomach. Meanwhile, Jan, who, by the by, this is not the first time you've watched the movie, correct, Jan?
No, it isn't, right?
It's not, but there was something about watching it yesterday that just did not sit well with me. See, I think I'm just getting old.
No, it's funny. This is the second time I watched this movie. And it's weird. The first time I remember watching it, I watched it on my laptop in like a dingy apartment I was renting. And I'm like, this is awful. This is garbage. I'm wasting my life. Am I unemployed? I might be. And now I'm watching it again, and there's a certain acceptance to the madness. I'm like, of course they're in Scotland. Of course. Oh, Orson and Woody are doing shtick. Like, it's become this garbage street that I used to avoid. And now I'm just accepting it.
Yeah, well, of course you accept it, but it's like, there are moments of it, but most of the time you don't even have to look at it. Like, you can look at your wall.
You can look at your feet.
No, that's why I missed all the dick jokes and like Mathis and a bunch of
because
characters.
You were literally dying.
And I was literally dying.
Because you had the same. You basically had the same reaction that Morgan Spurlock had when he downed nothing but McDonald's.
No, it was seriously some of the worst pain I've ever been in my life. And it's the only movie that I can say that it's had like a physical reaction on me.
My God.
Actually, all right. You know what movie sent me to the emergency room? That again actually was inflicted by our friend who showed Paul all those Halloween movies. I think it was The Faculty. I think certain people in our friend group who are in our group chat, but not in this podcast, tried to show me The Faculty, and I had a very concerning visit to another room in the apartment, and I immediately took myself to the emergency room, and that was 2 minutes into that movie.
Wow, you had to meet the faculty of the
Yeah.
hospital to help you. Okay, Jake, let's take us.
Get us out of this mystery, Jake.
Okay. So we have joined the Casino Royale fun movement. We managed to survive. Jan had a close call. We even have a new fan with Paul. We finally made it through. I'm happy.
I'm
You're
happy.
We're
Our
all
listeners are happy. Kevin McClory is happy.
Charles Feldman is dead, thank God.
Dead and loving it.
Woody Allen is in hell, and we are loving it. And we're ending here. We're ending here now.
So don't worry, listeners. We're back on track after this week.
Oh, yeah.
There will never be any other detours that we need to worry about.
We're never reviewing a non-Eon James Bond.
Never say never again.
We're never doing it again.
Never say never again! Never!
Anyway, this has been fun. I hope you enjoyed. This has been You'll Only Listen Twice. I am James Bond 007, and I'm dead.
I'm James Bond 007, and I'm dead and in heaven.
I'm James Bond 007, and I almost actually died because of this movie.
Died watching Casino Royale.
The end. Stop.
I'm sorry I got you into this.
Good heavens, Daddy, I couldn't have enjoyed it more.
Good show.